Here today? Huh? Yeah. You know, I just got. We did talk about some. You did, you said. That's it, which one do I have? I'm quitting.
Good morning. I mean, mid swallow. Drink.
We ready? At 8 o'clock.
Are we ready? Good? We're good?
Recording on. Okay. Go ahead and call this Board of Supervisors meeting to order, and first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Supervisor David Gomez to lead us to the back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Want to welcome everyone here. This is being put out on Facebook, which allows you to see the proceedings. YouTube, I mean, I said Facebook, YouTube. And anyway, so with that, we'll next go to the 1B, which is called to the public. Is there anyone that would like to address the board and call to the public? Daniel?
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Daniel Cervantes, Clifton resident. This morning, as I was walking down here to attend this meeting, I stopped at the train depot to catch my breath. And I sat down on the bench and quickly noticed at that digital sign, and it said, school is back in session, drive safe, watch the children. Yes, gentlemen, school starts today in Morenci. And right after that, the same sign was advertising the Clifton splash pad hours. And I wondered to myself, if the kids are back in session, how can they still go to the splash pad? And in another somewhat related issue to the splash pad, about a week ago, the Greenlee County Health Department employees gave away over 100 school backpacks to school-age children. And I got to see all the splash pads while they were still at the health department here, only because I stopped to see one of the nurses. And I asked her, what are you going to do with all those backpacks? And she let me know that they intended to give them away to school-age children. And they intended to do that at the splash pad. I let my next door neighbor, Thomas, know and asked him if he could take his 10-year-old grandson, who's starting his first day of 5th grade. And I told him where to go to get a backpack, and he did take him to the splash pad, and he did get a backpack. What else did I want to share with you? Okay, and gentlemen, I'm sharing a copy of today's local newspaper, the Copper Era, because it brings local news and matters that are of interest. to local residents. And one of them is that the local veterans are intend to bring in a Vietnam era helicopter to place on top of Morris Bluff, which people can see a portion of right outside the building. When you step outside the building, you can actually see the flags on top of Morris Bluff. They're going to bring a Vietnam era helicopter to place on top of Morris Bluff. I don't know if anybody intends to fly the helicopter. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address? Supporting call the public.
Seeing none, now we'll go ahead and go to agenda item 2. The board of supervisors will call the public.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Waiting for you.
made it in.
Yes, I did. Didn't get your attention in the far corner in the dark, I guess. It's Tim Sumner, Greenland County Sheriff. Mr. Chairman, members of the board and staff. Yeah, I barely made it in. Sent you an email this morning saying that today's first day of emergency, so we have a lot of our staff up there for the safety and security. And anyways, it's always good for that first day, and we make sure that we're out there to just kind of remind everybody, send a message that you need to pay attention again around the schools. So anyways, I made it here. I also sent a quick text to you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Rapier for the administrator. I was trying to get on YouTube, or I did get on YouTube actually, to see the meeting for today, and there was no meeting for today on YouTube. The one on there, if you can look at it, it does show June 20th. And so I finally clicked on that one, and that looks like it is this meeting right now currently. So if you're on that right now, I could pull up my computer and show you, but it's showing June 20th for your meeting today, which is proceeding right now. I don't know if that can be verified or not, but there was a discrepancy there, so I wanted to point that out. That stating it's being broadcasted, but it's June 20th instead of July 26th today. A couple other things. Recently, I was doing some public records requests. I know I've already brought this up twice. I'm sorry that it sounds like I know you like to say, Mr. Chairman, beating a dead horse, but it seems like I'm beating a dead horse, I guess, because already brought it up a couple times. I've tried to mitigate this, but on the Greenland County's website, when you go to public records request and you click that tab, it opens up all the public record requests where the appropriate person is to send them to for each individual office or department. On that list, I went to use one. It was still inaccurate. It is actually, it's not even a valid email address for the county. I got a reply back saying such. I was able to use the proper email address using the domain that I know Greenland County uses. But I'm just saying if someone else who would not know that we're trying to do such, it wouldn't work for them. Like I said, I know I've already brought it up twice about that. It's not a major list. I looked for my office for Irene Alva. I know ours is accurate. I've asked to make sure all of them are accurate, just for the public to be able to know. There's a reason that was required to be put on the website for all governing bodies. So if you could please have someone check into that and make sure that gets done finally, it'd be greatly appreciated. The last thing I had is, I was going to bring this up today, talking about the extreme incompetence and danger from Fleet Department of Greenland County Board of Supervisors, looking at a lot of the very dangerous safety wiring issues that we're seeing and experiencing. However, I really don't have time for that. Obviously, I would request, I'm going to send an agenda item to request to put on next month's agenda. I'd feel more comfortable having it on an agenda item where we can discuss it, rather than just being called to the public where I speak and you just listen. I think it'd be more fair that way. And for, even the fleet manager to be involved in the discussion if need be, but I do want to present that, and I'll bring it up and call to the public next time. If it's not on the agenda anyways, I'll go ahead and just discuss it. So then I'll have copies for the public if they would like to see it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, would you check in on that IT?
The date has been corrected. It is streaming. The date has been corrected. And yes, we'll make sure that's correct going forward. On the website, I don't know which one he's talking about. The sheriff has not called our office prior to today's meeting to alert us to a particular one. Maybe it's ours, maybe it's some other offices, but if you would like to let us know, we'll look it over as well, make sure they're right.
Email address.
Yes.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the public, the board and call the public? If not, we will now go to agenda item 2. Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of Benton County Public Health Service District. And after order of business, will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. A, consent agenda.
So move that we approve the consent agenda as posted.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. We are now convened as the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of Benton County Flood Control District, and after the order of business, will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. We have a consent agenda.
So move that we approve the consent agenda as posted.
I'll second that.
Have a motion second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. We are now convened as the Board of Supervisors. And as so, we will go to agenda item 4, Mr. Repair.
Thank you. I want to put this in order before the budget. Typically on final budget meetings, we adopt the budget as one of the very first things. We had originally set August 8th as our regular board meeting. But then again, today's meeting was set at the first of the year, actually last December or yesterday. When we moved that meeting back a day, we closed the gap to under the required 14 days. So it has to be 14 days from the date of today's hearing on the final budget until you adopt tax rates. Having moved this meeting back a day, we have to move the August 8th meeting back at least one day. My proposal is that we move it to August 10th. And set that for our regular board meeting. We will make changes on the website and so forth. But I wanted to get that out of the way before we adopted a budget. So we've got the required 14 days gap to set tax rates.
Yeah. I don't think there's any discussion here. I mean, that we need to do it, we'll need to do it. So let's change the board meeting to August 10th.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, just to be clean for this is the statutorily set time frame. I would appreciate a motion and an action item.
Well, I move that we approve to change the August 8th, 2023 regular Board of Supervisors meeting to August 10th, 2023 at the same time.
I second that motion.
A motion is second. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. We will now go to agenda item 5, Benton County fiscal year 2023-2024 final budget. Mr. Repair.
Thank you. I'll share my screen here. And go to this. And there it is. We'll cover quite a bit of ground today. Much of it you're already familiar with. We've covered it in the tentative budget. I'll point out a couple of, well, one significant change in the budget that you will see, and then a minor change. What's important is that by law, we cannot change the bottom line. The 17,345,534, somewhere's in there, and we have not. Likewise, the overall budget has not changed, but at the latter part of the presentation, I'll point those things out. Adoption of the budget is required. It has to be done before the third, before the last Monday in July. And then we have to adopt tax rates before the third Monday in August. That's why this timing is such. As you'll recall, we moved our tentative budget adoption date up so we could hit publication deadlines. That's becoming trickier and trickier each year with the paper. But we were able to meet those deadlines as well. Let's talk about what are the principles behind this budget. And it's a theme we've seen since the influx of federal money. That is, we want to continue to use one-time money for one-time projects. You cannot build a budget on one-time money and then figure you can sustain it if there's not a guaranteed revenue source to sustain that. So one of the budgeting tools that we used this year was to set aside $2 million into a future capital projects fund. This way we'll be able to take LACTF and ARPA money that is not spent in fiscal year 24 and preserve it for projects in the coming years. We want to make certain as we do so that we keep those funds dedicated to where we've directed them. Now, some of the LATCF funds, which are now available for the next fiscal year, which we'll apply for beginning today and tomorrow, they are not committed to specific projects like we have with the ARPA projects. But as those projects come up, as we move things from our various tiers and capital projects, we can then focus and spend that money on capital projects as necessary. The other thing is that we're looking at capital projects that have lasting value. In other words, we're trying to focus on capital projects that will have a very, very long lifespan, that have a positive cost benefit ratio to them. And then we, of course, continue to budget some for unanticipated funds. I suspect that those will become fewer as economies slow in both state and federal funding and budgets begin to tighten, but we want to be able to have the capacity to receive funds if we need to. We've addressed our expenditure limitation in last year's election, and we've talked about some of the sort of mental shifts that we're all having to do, knowing that that's not an ever-present low-hanging ceiling, but there are still budgeting principles that we need to abide by. So this budget observes those principles and forecasts them into future budget years. One, we cannot spend what we do not have. So our budgets will always be limited to projected revenues. County government really does not have an ability like the federal government does, or even to some degree the state government does, to spend money it doesn't have or it may get in the future. So we will continue to focus on cost cutting. We will focus on economic resilience. We'll monitor inflation, which has been tamed somewhat, but at the price of higher interest rates. So that will require that we do as much as we can, shifting from lend or borrowing money to using cash that we have on hand. Labor markets, general inflation, upward wage pressures, all things we'll want to pay attention to in future budgets. We have made some targeted marketing adjustments again this year. As we indicated in the tentative budget that began in last year's budget at the sheriff's office, but we continue to look at those things and we'll have a presentation on how we'll address those going forward using objective data. Again, we'll try to purchase vehicles with cash where we can. There may be some instances where we can't, either because the vehicles aren't available or the financing terms make it advantageous for us to purchase on borrowed money. What is evident throughout this budget, and it has been evident throughout your budgets for decades, is a fiscally conservative approach to how we run our business. We live within our means and we plan for future expenses. Many years ago, over 2 decades ago, this board began to have two funds that allow us to ride out the waves that are inherent in a copper-based market. Anytime you have a commodities-based market that is really so dominant by one producer, you're going to have fluctuations. But this board has taken an approach that allows us to live within our means, put some away for not just rainy days, but just for fluctuation. This budget and future budgets will continue to do that. When we began last year, in August of last year, the inflation rate was 8.5%. That's a significant marker because that's the month that is used to set the following year's minimum wage hike. So that minimum wage takes place in January, but it's based on the national inflation rate in August of the preceding year. Last year, when we were going through this, inflation was at about 8.5%. In order to address that risk, we implemented a creative wage incentive package that gave everyone a 2% plus $1.15 an hour raise. This rewarded those at the bottom end of the wage scale more than those at the top end of the wage scale. And it protected them from that inflationary pressure that was going on. They didn't lose real dollars. Again, we talked about the targeted adjustments. This year, at the end of fiscal year 23, in June of 23, the inflation rate is down to 3% nationally. That's not enough for the Fed. Their target is 2%. And although they have foregone an interest rate hike in July of this year, everyone is expecting they're going to give another 0.25% in August, which will take the federal baseline lending rate to 5.5%. That filters through every other interest rate in the market, from credit cards to car loans to home loans, and has the effect of tamping down the economy. It slows it down, cools it off. There's a good side to that. The downside to that, of course, is that it slows the economy down. Budget margins will be tighter. The wages that have been kept up. So inflation is a one directional street, one-way street. It only goes up. You don't have to have deflation to get wages back down. But because of that, it increased pressure once you get that economy cooled down. The average interest rate or average inflation rate for last year was 6.13%. This year, the board has approved 5% across the board increase. That combined with last year's raises means that Greeley County employees will have suffered no real how much dollars worth of effect in their paychecks. They've not lost ground to inflation. There have been some specific targeted market adjustments again that we've talked about in the last couple of meetings. Again, those have focused on employee sectors where we're at the greatest risk of having to lose people and have to replace them. We invest quite a bit in our employees. If there's high turnover, it makes it more costly to bring them back in. I'll focus on the third bullet point here, and that is that as we go forward in the next year, if the economy continues to slow, whether it drops into recession or whether it doesn't, it's going to be a slower economy than it has been leading up to fiscal year 23, which it was hot and began to overboil. What that means is we're going to have to be very careful in the coming years, next 2, 3, 4 years, that we keep very close to, or maybe even slightly under the national inflation rate. We've got to protect against those upward pressures that have built in this year and last year. And as the economy cools, we have to adjust with it. We will continue to look at other positions. Some of that review has already begun, but the key that we will use, and that Austin's been using all along, is objective-based data. In other words, these are market adjustments to try and retain critical employees. But we're not just going to pull numbers out of the air. We're going to look at across other counties. We're going to look at relevant private markets where that's necessary, so that when we come to you and say this needs to be adjusted, you'll be able to, as they say in math class, we'll have shown our work. And that would be true of all the departments and offices. We'll come to you and say, here's the work, here's why this needs to be done. A budgeting shift that we're doing this year is we're moving the routine budget purchases for IT equipment such as computers, mice, monitors, copiers, those kind of things, into each individual department and office. We know it's going to be a little bit out of focus. I commend those offices who have worked hard to try and estimate their needs and communicate that effectively to in our budget process. Even then, we may be off somewhat, but we're going to get better. We've got sufficient money held in reserve in the general fund to make sure that no one's needs will be unmet. But as we continue to analyze throughout the year and at the end of each year what those needs are by department, by office, that's going to get better and better fine-tuned over time. The key will be communication, honest evaluation, and close hand-in-glove work with our IT contractors to help us know what is necessary and what is the best fit for the needs. Let's talk about some things we've done to lower our overall budget pressure permanently. The first, of course, our out-of-county tuition. We've saved about $2.5 million in 2 years That number is very high because current community college enrollment is very high. Our primary colleges where our students go, particularly our neighbor next door, has maxed out their property tax rate. And that's where our contribution is pegged to. Now, there is still a subsidy that may or may not be there in the future. But the permanent fix has been in the formula. And so regardless, obviously, if there's more students enrolled, we'll pay more. That's the way it's built. But even in those years, our contribution will be substantially less, probably to the tune of $500,000 to $1 million a year, structurally built into the budget. We've talked about PSPRS, unfunded liability. There is a 1-year lag. So we just made a substantial payment that should pay off, and I say should because it's a year-old data, but it should pay off or almost pay off our entire outstanding unfunded liability. That won't show up in our rates until fiscal year 25, because those rates are given to us in the spring and based on evaluations that are taking place last fall. But that 1-year lag will catch up in fiscal year 25, and then going forward, our annual required contribution or ARC will be substantially less every year. In that vein, I think this budget will attempt, and we'll continue to look at these things throughout the years. We need to look and say, are there things that we can look at to do better, more efficiently, less costly? That should be a process we're engaged in, not just the board, but every office and department all the time throughout the year. You know, there's lots of stories, folklore stories about, well, why do you do that? Well, because my mother, because my grandmother, because that's the way it's done. And that there's usually a reason why it's done. And sometimes those reasons still are valid. And other times we need to look back and say, is there a better way to do this? Some functions we do, our budgeting process is set for us by statute. That's how it's got to be done. But there are a lot of processes we can look at and say, can we do them better? And so I would encourage everybody from every employee to every office and department to the board to continue to look at those options. This is our 10-year history of our net assessed evaluation. You'll see that in fiscal year 23-24, it is the lowest net assessed valuation since fiscal year 20. So in about 5 years. That reflects, as we know, that the net assessed valuation is primarily affected by our partners on the Hill. And that is what they call centrally evaluated property, not locally assessed. And so and there's a formula that accounts for not just its value on the market, but also production, for the cost of production and several other factors. If nothing else, that reflects, as we all know, a somewhat slowing of the economy. But as a result, our primary tax rate has gone up in accordance with it. This is the highest primary property tax rate we've had in 10 years. It represents a fairly small increase in actual tax bills. Again, that's a product of the unique economy we have, where one taxpayer carries the overwhelming amount of the burden. As it stacks up, Green County has the the fourth lowest primary property tax rate. I think I mentioned that recently I was at a meeting where one of our hometown boys, Mr. Prude, who's the county administrator of Coconino County, was bragging how Coconino County has the lowest primary property tax rate. He says, not so fast, Steve. Wait till we get combined. And we all of a sudden, our horse nudges its nose to the front of the race. But nevertheless, even at the initial evaluation, we are one of the lowest cost providers of county services in the state. Graphically depicted, you'll see that there's sort of 3 tiers. There's the Coconino, Apache, Navajo, Greeley that are at the low, and then there's a group that they're in the middle. Interestingly, La Paz moved from number 4 last year to way down to number 11. And that was a single year jump. They jumped nearly $1 on their primary property tax rate. They don't have a secondary rate that they charge for things, so that's their entire rate. But still, Their primary is almost, well, more than double our combined rate. And then, of course, there's the four big hitters at the end, whose primary and combined rate outpace everybody else's. For combined rate, our history, you'll see that we're up slightly. Again, this is the highest combined rate we've had in 10 years. The combined rate is not as high a jump as the primary property tax rate was. It's important to note, however, that for all of the taxing districts, the county, the public health services, and flood control, we have not exceeded the truth in taxation rate. In other words, if this board had wanted to, you could have held a hearing and gone even higher on the primary property tax rate. We have not done that. I know that there are many jurisdictions that do and do so regularly. This one has not. And there we go. The horse's nose is edged to the front. In the combined tax burden on our taxpayers, Greeley County offers the lowest combined tax rate in the state. You'll see that La Paz County has moved up a little bit because they don't have a secondary rate. There's been some movement, but this ranking, particularly on the top four and the bottom three, remains pretty consistent year in, year out. Those in the middle shift a little bit, but you'll see that Greeley County does offer the best bang for the buck of any county in the state. And that's a big depicted graphically. You see those three groups sort of stand out a little bit. Yuma on their combined rates starts to approach the large taxing counties. Our revenue is primarily driven by sales tax, which is both the shared sales tax and our half-cent sales tax, followed then third by our property tax rate. There are counties, I was reading in Cochise County last night, their number one revenue source is property tax. 40% of their revenue comes from local property tax. We are very fortunate that we don't have to rely that heavily on a local property tax. And of course, there are some other significant contributors. This year, the LACTF is a significant contributor. We know that won't be there next year and in subsequent years. I've had conversations in the last couple of days about how we can be more effective in trying to obtain some broadband dollars, but those won't necessarily, in fact, likely won't funnel directly to the county, but rather through partners that can help build that system out. The other one that's significant is the auto VLT. Now, as an overall thing, that dropped almost in half from last year to this year. So that means we dropped from roughly 3% of our revenue forecast to about 1.5%. So it's not one of our big hitters, but it as a percentage, like I say, it was a 50% drop. There's depicted graphically. You can see we heavily rely on our half-cent and our shared sales tax revenue. On expenses, this is very broad and very broad categories, and perhaps the board would like we can do some deeper analysis. The first category includes law enforcement, including our commitments to PSPRS, retrain and recruit. Now the retention and recruitment, most of that will come back to us. There will be some funding for employee-related expenses that the board has budgeted and that we won't be reimbursed. But the actual stipends will be reimbursed eventually, maybe not all of them in fiscal year 24. The court system, including the county attorney, when we put either in law enforcement or in the court system, we've moved it to the court system for analysis purposes. The admin and core county functions. These are the things it takes to make the elected officials work. Their budgets. Their combined budgets. And then the last line item is general services. This is what we contribute to the public health services, any money we throw into roads, all of the other functions, building maintenance, fleet, everything that is not an elected official of the court system or law enforcement is in the general services budget. And you'll see that those two, general services and law enforcement, consume most of the budget. Close to 70% of the budget in those two budget areas. Those contributions look differently in different counties. Some counties, for example, have set up different districts, special taxing districts. Many counties have a jail district, for example. So any money that goes to our jail system in another county would reduced that in the jail taxing district. Others have used hospital districts. Apache County has a out of county tuition district where they tax just for that purpose. So we have, and I think this goes back to conservative principles, is that we live primarily out of our general fund. And you'll see that in a subsequent slide. But that way we don't set up new taxing districts where you kind of nickel and dime the taxpayer, a nickel here to the jail district and a dime over here to this. Instead, it's very clear, it's coming from the general fund. So approximately 56% of all of our functions we do are funded out of the general fund. Special revenues are those funds that can only be used for their designated purpose. So there's a jail enhancement fund and a county attorney enhancement funds. Those could not be used to pay salaries in the assessor's office or to buy a bulldozer for the road department or something. They have to be used just for the designated funds, and we have a bunch of them. Probably about 150, and they each have a designated area. Those funds help alleviate pressure on the general fund. So, for example, when the jail enhancement, the county attorney enhancement, when they can use those for functions, then that helps us keep the pressure down on our local taxpayers. And there are lots of different funds out there that address that. You'll notice on the caption, I said, this is what inflation looks like. Our healthcare costs are up nearly 11%. In the liability realm, several areas of the country have had natural disasters. The property tax liability, this is not what happens if we create a liability. This is what happens when a public building insured by public pools gets damaged in an earthquake or a hurricane or whatever. The last 2 years actually have been very, very hard, and this market has been hardening fast. And so as we at ACIP have talked about how we fund this, one of the things that has been hard on our minds is how do we mitigate what's happening primarily in other markets. In fact, I was reading just the other day that there are some, I'm sorry, it was a fire. But there's an entire sector of the market that's pulling out of Florida because the losses are so consistent and they're very large, and they're simply not insuring that anymore. And so as we see those kinds of disasters, it has an effect. We haven't had the earthquake, we haven't had the hurricane, but those things affect our property tax rates, not property tax, property insurance rates. Cyber security, interestingly, is starting to level off. Primarily because more and more public entities are addressing the threat. So you could always get cyber insurance if you're in the private sector, because they basically say you do these dozen things or you don't get it. And private market, we're very quick to respond to that. ACIP has literally led the nation in responding to these cyber threats. So our reinsurer, our broker, if you will, is Gallagher and Company. They attend these pools all across the nation, and ACIP has done through our IT working group has done more than just about any other pool in the nation to protect against cyber threat. It's always there, but because that is starting to happen, the cyber insurance market is starting to soften a little bit, and so there will be products available. We've still been able to maintain and get the best rates that are available from public entities because of what we've done. Our contributions to retirement systems are both slightly up, but it's steady. Those remain pretty consistent. Elected official retirement, unfortunately, has not. And you'll see that I put a bit of history there to give you a sense of what our contribution rate is. This is a closed system that was underfunded at the time it was closed. There was a proposal in the last legislature to fix this, but it went the way of essentially giving every member in the House and Senate $20 million to spend as they wish, and you needed a collective group of money to pay this thing down. It was an unfortunate missed opportunity because it would have saved hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 20 years. But it's already been to the Arizona Supreme Court. This can't be touched, and so it will have to be funded. Our contribution rates may get to the point where we're paying dollar for dollar for retirement for the elected official retirement fund. We do get a $250,000 subsidy to help us on this, but it doesn't cover all of our costs. we already discussed the reduction of out of county tuition. This year, our actual bill will be 173, not quite 174,000. We talked about the raises. The budget does maintain our contributions for those programs that target our seniors and most vulnerable. There was a disconnect during the pandemic. We reconnected, and I want to recognize Laura and her efforts. Laura Garcia, she researched this. She went back, she did the history, she contacted each of these entities and got it straight. And that was a lot of legwork, going back and sort of reconstructing what had happened in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. So I wanted to acknowledge her efforts, but this budget accounts for that. The budget also accounts for a contribution to the San Francisco revitalization recreational project that the board has approved. And then, of course, we can plan for future capital projects. We talked about moving away from financing our passenger vehicles. We've set up our capital projects in a way that we will get our tier 1 projects done, or mostly done, by the end of the fiscal year. It's ambitious, but we're already seeing changes, and you'll see that in Tony's presentation about how we're making progress on those quickly. Talked about those things. We currently for this year have 163 total full-time equivalent positions budgeted. That's down slightly. Most of those are funded out of the general fund. This is one of those things that is several years back. The Arizona Tax Research was able to push through 2 things on our budgeting forms. One, they wanted to see how much funds were available to every office and department broken out, and the others, they want to know how many employees have you got employed. So this is what we budgeted for this year. You've got copies of our official budget forms. Those are in the budget books. They were been available on the website for 2 weeks. The schedules are a summary. That's the one we publish in the paper. There's the tax levy and tax rate. That's our property tax rate. And then we have Schedule C is all the other revenue we get that's not from our primary property tax or secondary tax rate. Schedule D is where we transfer. We put, for example, $356,000 from the general fund as a continuing maintenance of effort into the health department. We make some other small transfers to keep other departments afloat. The probation department, we make this year made a $220,000 contribution to the probation fund, primarily because we fund juvenile detention, which unfortunately last year was very high, unusually high. We don't expect that to continue. Schedule E is the expenditures by fund and the expenditures by department. So the one is the accounting funds, the others grouped together by department and offices. And then G is the full-time employee personnel compensation. So this is a slide we showed right at first that talks about how the total amounts cannot be increased. And they haven't, but as we were going through, and this, Renee found this error, but as we went through, particularly the sheriff's budget, we realized that there were some line item positions that was funded more than the number of positions the board has approved. And we discovered that under the deputies line item, there were fewer positions funded than the board has approved. So we were off. And it has been masked over the last couple of years because there was some vacancy savings. So neither line item really exceeded its budget. But as we went through there and said, well, how many detention officers, how many, and I don't remember the exact position. I know patrol officers were one of them. But we realized as we broke it out, we realized that we had miscalculated or misfunded on those line items. So there needed to be an adjustment made. So we shifted approximately 75,000, it's a little bit more than 75,000, right about $75,000 from the administration's budget to the sheriff's budget to make sure that each of those line items were properly funded in his budget. So that 733,324 was at right around it was 775,000. It's in our published tentative budget. And then the exact opposite number was raised in the sheriff's budget to account for those discrepancies we found. And again, as we were going through, as we do every year, we go through the budgets to make sure that they line up. We probably, in the course of the budget process, touch on over 10,000 in discrete numbers inside the budgets. And we do find errors. We probably don't find all of the errors, but we find some. And as Renee was going through these budgets and I had Austin checking on our approved positions, we found this error that needed to be corrected. We can't, however, change the bottom line. And so we didn't. So we moved money from one budget to the other to accommodate that. There was a similar adjustment in the special revenues funds where we found about $26,000 of small cumulative errors. And so we made an adjustment in the road fund to account for that. It's much smaller in magnitude. As part of our budget that we adopt every year, we maintain this year $2 million as unassigned budget. It is there. That actually this is to cover fluctuation. Again, this goes back. We've had this in place for 20 years. And this is if all of our revenue sources, because we're so dependent on just a couple of revenue sources, if they begin to tank, this will be used with other cost-cutting measures to allow us to ease into a new budget year where we can make the hard changes necessary. It's not intended to be a budget replacement. That's not enough money to just run the county for a year, not even close. But if we do things that we've done in the past, hiring freezes, not filling vacancies, not purchasing things we budgeted purchased, all of those cost-cutting measures combined with this fund should get us to the next budget year. So we adopt this policy every year. We also have a personnel funding policy. This will change dramatically next year. This is based on valuations from June 30th of 2022. And you'll see that figure 1.925 million is the amount we just paid off. That was the unfunded actuarial liability. So this would change dramatically, as well as our funding policy. Now we'll be working with PSPRS and CSA over the course of the next year as we get those new valuations in, and we may completely revamp this funding policy. But and you'll see down there I've highlighted annual contribution excessive. The ARC is the annual required contribution, but anything in addition to that will change that actuarial valuation. So as we go forward, this will look like an entirely different document next year. But because of the 1 year lag, we're required to adopt this and we'll continue to do so. I'm not going to go over all of this. We have proposed tier 1 projects. Those have not changed. The proposed 2 tier projects, you'll notice number 9, we moved the fairgrounds exhibit building floor from 3 to 2. The order that they're listed here is not in any particular order of priority. That's simply how they got thrown up on the board. I think what is important is that list we intend to get done. Some of those things are already done or mostly done, like a well at Loma Linda. There's the permanent GPS base. That's an agenda item later. We'll purchase some key components and move on those. But our intent is to get this done or mostly done and cleared off and replace with new projects. And then of course our tier 3 projects, they're there. We don't want to lose sight of them. Some of those opportunities may come up mid-year. We will reevaluate, shuffle our deck, so to speak. But these are long-term things that may or may not take place in the next couple of years. The entire capital improvement plan, of course, is in your budget book. This is the official resolution that we're required to use to adopt the budget. You'll see I provide you some proposed motions that reference all of the things that we need to do. This is the official, we passed the budget resolution. There's a similar one for the Public Health Services District. And that resolution is also in your book. It is also will be addressed in the proposed motions at the beginning of your budget book. The tax rate setting, of course, we'll adopt those rates for our budget as part of the budget today, and then set the tax rates for all taxing entities on August 10th. That's our irrigation districts, our school districts, everybody, and those are officially set so that our treasurer could then act as the tax collector banker to collect those taxes for each of those entities. Those set out the rates. They're reflecting the proposed motions. Those will support the budgets that we have, that we have proposed. That's that.
Any questions?
None for me.
Good job. We really appreciate all the effort that not only you and your staff have, but everyone involved. Including department heads and other elected officials have done. And if there's no questions, a motion to go into public hearing would be in order.
I move that we adjourn into public hearing pursuant to ARS 41-17104 for the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget.
Second that motion. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to address the board on the budget? Yes, Mr. Tomlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Tim Sumner, Greenlee County Sheriff. One of the questions that I had was answered, and that was the difference from your packet that was on June 28th and that has been put out for the public to look at. Had those numbers for the sheriff's office budget at a different amount than what's on your current budget right now. And so that was addressed. It was also described how that was adjusted. However, if you have in front of you, if you can pull that back up and look at that Derek prepared just showed, the two highlighted areas on Schedule D, it has the administration budget and the sheriff's budget that were highlighted. You look at those numbers of 733 as it was. I don't know if you want to pay attention to it or not, but administration general fund is 733,324. Under June 28th packet, it was the same number, 733,324. The one prior to that was 733,324. However, the sheriff's budget has changed, and it has gone from right now currently. It is sitting at on the one before you today, 5309376. This right here, there's a discrepancy. If I want to really point this out to you right now, and Mr. Rapier maybe want to pay attention and look at this specifically right this moment. On Schedule D on the sheriff's budget, and then look at Schedule F on this sheriff's budget. It's about 6 pages later. Schedule D, the sheriff's budget, you'll see in the general administration budget on the same page, you highlighted. Schedule F, about 6 pages later, see the sheriff's budget. That one says still 5309376. When I looked at this Schedule F versus Schedule D, I went through all the fellow elected sheriffs in the entire county. I also looked at IT because the IT shifts. All of those budgets are the exact to the dollar from Schedule D to Schedule F, as they should be. When you look at the state forms, they should be the exact same. Even though this change has been made on Schedule D now, as was pointed out and highlighted there. I know I'm going to run out of time, but this is important. And the bottom line number still has not changed. I agree with Mr. Rapier on that. The 17 million figure has not changed on any of these. It's always been the same. However, I'm not sure how it went up on the sheriff's budget. I'm not complaining my sheriff's budget went up. No complaints there. Went up $75,000. However, there's no other adjustments I see on Schedule D that reflects that. So I'm pretty good at math as well. And I don't understand how that number could change by 75,000, but the administration number of 733,324 is not changed. Compare Schedule D to Schedule F on both the administration and sheriff. That was what was just described to you. I've got some serious problems there. The math is not adding up. You got your financial officer in the room, we have the treasurer in the room, maybe you can verify, but the math is not adding up and that bottom line number did not change. And I don't understand. I didn't have the time to look through all this packet. I did ask to speak, Mr. Chairman, on number 5 too. I was going to ask a question. I also asked to speak on the next one because number 2 is the only motion proposal that's accurate. However, I sent you an email. Did you receive that?
I didn't see it.
I've asked to speak on a few agenda items today. And
I did not.
And as typical fashion, I've sent to you and to Bianca. I know my time's up, but this is a point of matter for the county attorney to look at as this proceeds. You've already missed me on item 5. I'd like, as I proceed through the meeting, to be able to speak on the items I've requested to speak on today,
And I will look at that.
as I have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said, I ran out of time there. I'd like to speak on a couple other items for the sheriff's budget, but that was the most particular and important, that numbers just are not adding up. I know it's your final adoption, but it's very problematic.
I think Derek, remember on Schedule E on the on 019. And then on the Schedule F, that 5309376. Remember, I asked you about that.
Yes. And the sheriff is correct. Schedule A, where your bottom line is maintained. Those numbers automatically by formula feed in from schedules B, C, D, and E. F is not, and we did not make the adjustment on F, and we can certainly make that adjustment on Schedule F to reflect the Schedule E. Schedule F is a data, and it should be accurate. There's no question about it, but it does not feed into the Schedule A bottom line. So in that regard, it doesn't affect your bottom line. We will correct that, but that's simply, we didn't make the hand adjustment to Schedule F, which is the groupings by budgets by group. But the adjustments were made on the line items. What governs the spending of money is the Schedule E and that schedule. So that would certainly we can address that before you adopt.
Chairman, let me ask you a question.
Well, yes, go ahead. One question. Thank you.
One question. May I speak about my other topic then for this item? Because I would not have wasted my 3 minutes if I knew that was okay to have an accurate
Okay,
document. It was not accurate. So
Okay,
it'll take like 30 seconds on this one.
go ahead.
Thank you. And again, I thought was the most important thing, so I wanted to discuss it, but since it's not an important topic to have matching items, I'll speak on this. A couple meetings ago, Mr. Rapier talked when the board asked him about the litigation going on. He stated that $100,000 was sent to my budget for this upcoming fiscal year, and $300,000 was sent into your budget for the general services budget, which is one of the items on there. I just wanted to ask where that money's showing. I do reflect it and see it on the sheriff's budget. I don't see it on yours, and those numbers of the $300,000 increase on yours, I'm not seeing that anywhere. I don't know if that was explained to you or not, but I have not seen that. So that's the only question I had.
Would you repeat it for me again?
This is where the 100,000 for the sheriff's budget and 300,000 for the board of supervisors budget went for added expenses for pending litigation that you described to the board a couple meetings ago when Mr. Campbell asked you what's the current amount, and then the follow-up question was, did we prepare for the future FY24 budget?
Sure, let me address that question first, if you'd like, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So, first of all, I discovered where the problem is, and well, let's address the funding for litigation. It's my understanding we're up to about $124,000 spent apparently on the litigation. In the neighborhood of 70,000 plus on behalf of the sheriff, in the neighborhood of 50,000 plus for the board of supervisors. The budget for that ongoing litigation is found in the sheriff's line item under professional services under the 019 budget. That is $100,000 there. Under the board's side of that, if you will, is grouped together under professional services. Under the general services fund. And that's which will lead to the explanation of the mistake I made earlier, and I'll explain that to you. But in short, there are several other professional services we pay for out of that line item out of the 016 budget. And so that 016 is where that litigation fund will come from. Should the sheriff's expend more money than is budgeted, then obviously there's sufficient money, we hope, in the general services line item budget to accomplish that. There is no broken out $300,000 for the board to spend. This isn't we get 3 times as much money as the sheriff does. We're paying both sides of this litigation. It's coming out of the general fund. And we're not going to be able to avoid that. And so regardless of which law firm is billing the county, we're paying both sides. And so we budgeted sufficient between the sheriff's office professional line item budget and the general services professional services line item budget. Hopefully to cover those litigation costs in the coming fiscal year. If we blow through that money, then obviously we'll have to come back mid-year and see where we can find some more. But if I might, I've discovered the problem that I created, and I will admit that was in my haste last night. So I will share my screen and show you, because the sheriff's correct, the 733 has not changed. So let me get to the Zoom meeting here. I feel almost like a magician saying, look over here, not over there, but I'm going to show you exactly where the rabbit's coming from, and it's not hidden. So this is on our published tentative budget. I just pulled this up off of our website, and where I'm circling my cursor right now, 733, 324, correct, it has not changed. That is the administration budget. That is not where we made the adjustment to account for the sheriff's office budget. If you look down here, 1.656650. That is the general services budget, 016. And that professional services line item we just talked about, that's where we made the adjustment and moved $75,000 from the general services budget line item over to the sheriff's office line item. So you see here, this is 5.309. This is the tentative budget that was published. So I'll
Those between 16 and 19.
it's between 16 and 19, not 8 and 19, that I had indicated before. So that was certainly my mistake. And as we, let me stop share here. And if you look in your budget book, and I'll pull it up here as well. So what I should have highlighted, as they indicate here on the screen, is those two budgets, the 016 and the 019. And the difference is $75,105 on both of those. So I identified the incorrect fund, but the shift is here. That's why the bottom line doesn't change. And so again, on Schedule F, we can make that adjustment. It will not change the bottom line because that's just groupings. That's taking everything off Schedule E and shuffling it, all the hearts, all the spades, all the, that way. And so, but certainly we will adjust that and if in your budget motion, you simply direct me to make that change on Schedule F, I will do so. But the budget is balanced. I appreciate that the error of my presentation was pointed out. The error of our math was not. We've explained that.
Anything else in public hearing? Yes. Yes, please.
Chairman Lunt, the people here have just heard about what's happening on this litigation. And we might have questions about what provoked the litigation, who are the law firms involved, where is this all happening, in what county, who's the judge? Those are just questions that people might have. The sheriff mentioned that he and his officers were up in Morenci because of the first day of school. And it's my understanding that the Morenci schools still does not have what they call a full-time resource officer. They don't, right? And the sheriff and his deputies were up there this morning watching over the kids. And why can't the sheriff have a full-time resource officer? The Clifton Police Department can't do it. They got about 3 people on their staff. So I appreciate what the sheriff does. His deputies up there taking care of the kids, and somebody should pay for a full-time resource officer. And then just on another matter, we mentioned the backpacks that the health department. Where did this money come from? That was nice that they did that, so it's good that the county is providing money that takes care again of the kids, So I appreciate what Mr. Repair is doing and his staff are doing, Austin Adams. And you guys have done a great job. Thank you for your budget and thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's Crandall.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, going back to the budget discrepancies, now on Schedule E, the numbers do not match with the budget on Schedule F under the general services. And I thought this was an official document that was being handed out to everybody. Maybe it should be corrected before it gets fully handed out to everybody. Thank you. Sorry, Mark Crandall, Chief Deputy, Greeley County.
Thank you.
Is that the same discrepancy?
Yeah, it is the same.
Okay. We'll make sure.
Anyone else? If not, go ahead and we'll close it, the public hearing. And we will go to agenda item 7. And Sheriff, I did look at my emails and I see you sent me one, and yes, but I had not looked at that previously. Otherwise, you would have been given the opportunity to talk.
I'm sure you always have, so I do appreciate that, and I'm sure it was an oversight. It's a busy morning all the way around, so don't hold that against you. Tim Sumner, Greeley County Sheriff. For agenda item number 7 here, this is looking at all the proposed language for the motions. This is one thing that, I hear it a lot, honestly, just, in these meetings, in the town council meetings and stuff. A lot of times the Robert's Rule of Orders kind of slip a little bit, or a lot more than a little bit, but you go to the state legislature, it's rigid, you follow the structure. And when it comes down to motions, it's something that, even like the local kids in high school, they pointed this out, and particularly one asked me about it, who said, how come our governing boards don't motion properly? So that's a great question. So the reason I'm bringing this out is you have your proposed motion language in front of you. Right here, it's highlighted. The only one that's proper is proposed motion number 2. Your number 1, number 3, number 4 are all incorrect. And I know maybe a semantic thing, but it really is. And so one of those things that the student asked, can I go to one of the board meetings or the town council meetings and explain how you're supposed to make a motion? And so number 2, if you look at it, is correct. This one says, I move to, and it says what it says. Okay. The other ones say, I make a motion to whatever I'm going to make a motion to. I know you may say, all right, we're splitting hairs. We're not splitting hairs. You go anywhere else that follows that in the legislature, they would never allow a motion to start off with, I make a motion to. You don't make the motion, you say, I move to. And so since this one was in print, I just wanted to point that out. And the other thing is, if they were all done one way or all done the other way, that would have been one thing, but there's inconsistencies even within your own document of how, I know it's just a note for you to be able to make the motion and articulate it properly and make sure you have the numbers in there and everything, and you don't have to go flipping through pages to get those documents, those numbers. But just the inconsistency that three of them say I make a motion to, and one of them says I move to. It just, when you go to make the motion, I suggest whoever's making those motions, obviously you don't have to follow what's written. I would suggest that you follow Robert's Rule of Order and do it properly and just say I move to and proceed with whatever motion you're making. Everything else looks proper there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Robert's Rule of Orders do not apply to this body. There's nothing improper about the motions. Might I suggest, before you consider the motions, that at the end of motion, proposed motion of the floor, simply say, and we direct that county administration correct the errors on Schedule F to be consistent with Schedule E of the final budget.
Hey, does any of the supervisors have any discussion on the agenda, on the budget for 2023? I'm just gonna say, budgets are very complex. There's a lot of numbers. There's a lot of different groups. And we are audited every year, and we get clean audits. I appreciate those that have gone through the budget, and yes, if we made an error, we need to know it, and we'll correct that. So thank you. But I hope that you realize the effort that goes into putting a budget. And I don't care whether it's a private entity or a public, and the publics are even more than private because there's so much more scrutiny in a public setting. But anyway, we've always valued being correct, and if there is a mistake and it's pointed out, we will correct it. We always have, and we always will. But I personally, and I think I speak for the board, appreciate all those involved in putting this budget together. This thing has been changed so many times, as it needs to be. And we'll do the best we can. And I hope people realize it's the best we can. And those doing it are doing an outstanding job in doing that. They have so many balls in the air to do that. So once again, this board appreciates all the effort on all of you, because it takes everyone to put this budget together. It takes all the elected officials, all the department heads, staff. Renee has, I go down there and that computer's smoking all the time, but I appreciate that. And the staff in the office, and Austin and Derek. And anyway, that's my 2 bits for the day. And gentlemen, do you have any discussion? If not, motions would be in order.
Well, I move to set the fiscal year 2023-2024 primary property tax rate for Green County at 0.8118 per $100 of assessed value.
I second that motion. Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, and you know what? The staff and the elected officials do a real good job of trying to keep that number low. So we appreciate the other elected officials and everyone involved. So with that, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Second.
I move to set the fiscal year 2023-2024 Public Health Service District tax rate at 25 cents per $100 of assessed value.
I second that motion. Okay, we have a motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Well, I move that we set the fiscal year 2023-2024 flood control district tax rate at 0.1876 per $100 of the assessed value.
Second that motion.
Here we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing now, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Motion passes. Thank you. We will now go to the next on the total budget.
All right, I pursuant to ARS 42-171 or 17105, I move to adopt the fiscal year 2023-2024 Greeley County budget as follows. To adopt the general fund budget in the amount of 17,947,376 and the total. 378. Look at that. I should put these on, but they're right here. I'm gonna still try to persevere. All right, 17 million, correction, in the amount of 17,947,378. And the total budget in the amount of 34,545,354. This includes the flood control budget in the amount of 567,889. And the public health service district budget in the amount of 2,687,256. This motion includes the tax rates set forth on Schedule B for the general fund, the flood control district, and the public health service district. This motion includes the passage of the resolution for the adoption of the final budget for fiscal year 2024. The passage of the resolution of the Board of Directors of the Greeley County Public Health Service District regarding the fiscal year 2024 tax levy and rate, the adoption of the capital improvement plan, the fund balance policy, and the public safety personnel retirement system pension funding policy. And we direct the county administrator to make the corrections to Schedule F to match that of Schedule E as discussed. Is that clear?
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or clarification? If not, we will proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes and is so ordered. Thank you. And once again, thank you all involved in this task of putting this budget together. We appreciate that. We'll now go to agenda item 8, and we have Matthew Narder. Did I say that right? And the Arizona Department of Environment and Quality Community Liaison person. And thank you, and we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time. Yeah, so my name is Matt Narder. I'm with ADEQ. I'm actually a hydrogeologist at ADEQ. I have our community liaison here, Melissa Hayes, is with me as well. So yeah, we really appreciate your time. I know schedules are busy. The reason I'm here is that the US EPA is proposing to regulate a new set of chemicals. They're called by the acronym PFAS or PFAS. And the regulation of these chemicals is going to have impacts here throughout the state of Arizona, particularly on our drinking water providers. The EPA has proposed new contaminant limits for these chemicals for our drinking water providers. And so we're working throughout the state to try to figure out the full scope of the issue and also to work with our drinking water providers to get them prepared for the proposed regulation. So we're out here just going to the counties, trying to provide this information so that you know what we're doing and you're aware of the activities that we're conducting here in the county. We have a short video here that just kind of introduces the topic of PFAS and talks generally about what we're doing throughout the state. And I can let that play, and then I can talk a little bit more specifically about what we're doing here in the county and some of the results that we're seeing. So I'll let that play and then I'll come back up.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You back that up, Austin.
Austin, are you sharing sound? Your Zoom control. You have to set your audio settings, if you're going to use sound to share sound.
With a brief introduction of PFAS in Arizona. PFAS is a term for a group of chemicals that many Arizona residents are likely to hear more about in the coming years. We at ADEQ would like to provide you with a brief introduction of PFAS in Arizona so you can understand what PFAS are, what ADEQ is doing to address these chemicals in our environment, and what steps to take now to protect your health. First, it's important to understand some basic facts about PFAS. Per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, are a large family of man-made chemicals that have been in use since the 1940s. PFAS have unique physical and chemical properties that make them very useful for a wide range of applications, most notably stain and water resistance. But these same properties can make them highly stable and resistant to degradation in the environment, earning them the nickname forever chemicals. Because the length of their carbon-fluorine tail and the structure of their functional head can vary, thousands of unique PFAS molecules are possible. Some PFAS have been more commonly manufactured than others, including two of the most widely used and studied PFAS molecules, PFOA and PFOS. Scientific studies have shown that exposure to some PFAS may be linked to harmful health effects in humans and animals. Depending on how much PFAS someone is exposed to and for how long, certain PFAS can have potential harmful effects, for example, increasing the chance of getting some cancers, increasing cholesterol levels, and affecting reproductive health and child development. Because of their unique and beneficial properties, PFAS have been incorporated into many common consumer products, including carpets, furnishings, food packaging, cosmetics, clothing, cookware, and many others. In some cases, consumers can choose to limit their exposure to PFAS, for example, by avoiding products labeled as water or stain resistant, avoiding food in contact with grease-proof packaging, and avoiding personal care products with fluorinated ingredients on the label. Drinking PFAS-contaminated water is another potential source of exposure, but one that for many is not easily avoided through personal choice alone. However, in most cases, exposure to contaminated drinking water can be eliminated through testing, regulation, and treatment, something we'll discuss more in just a bit. The life cycle of PFAS starts when they are first manufactured by industry. Although Arizona has not historically been home to any PFAS manufacturers, these chemicals can make their way to our state through the purchase of consumer products, the use of firefighting foams, and as raw materials used in the production of other products. People may be exposed directly from using these products, but as they are used or thrown away, they also enter our landfills and our wastewater treatment plants, and in turn can be released into the environment where they can accumulate and do not easily break down. From there, they may end up in our food or our drinking water. With PFAS so common in the world today, it's not surprising that we find these chemicals in our bodies as well. The CDC has measured PFAS in the US population since 1999 and has found that PFAS are present in the blood of 99% of Americans. However, since 2002, the production and use of two of the most common PFAS, PFOA and PFOS, has declined, and researchers have seen a corresponding decline in blood levels. In the case of PFOS, by more than 85%. Therefore, despite their forever chemical nickname, we can see that reducing exposure to these chemicals can have a positive impact on the levels in our bodies. PFAS are not currently regulated at the national level or in Arizona. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency first released provisional PFAS health advisories in 2009, which defined advisory levels for PFOA and PFOS. Since that time, the advisory levels have been revised lower, first in 2016 and again in 2022, and were expanded to include additional compounds, PFBS and Gen X chemicals. Health advisories are not legally enforceable, They identify the concentration of a contaminant in drinking water at which adverse health effects are not anticipated to occur over a lifetime. In March 2023, EPA took the next step. After many years of study and recent research, EPA proposed a national primary drinking water regulation. The proposed regulation would create a maximum contaminant level, or MCL, for 6 common PFAS. An MCL is the maximum concentration of a contaminant allowed in drinking water that can be delivered by a public water system. EPA has proposed to regulate PFOA and PFOS at a level of 4 parts per trillion, while 4 other PFAS are proposed to be regulated as a mixture using a standard calculation called a hazard index. These proposed MCLs were developed by EPA to account for chronic exposures to low levels of PFAS over time. At concentrations typically found in drinking water, they are not dangerous in the same way as acute water contaminants like E. coli, which may be dangerous if consumed even once. It may be helpful to understand the unit of measure that's being used by EPA for the proposed regulation. 1 part per trillion is equivalent to a single drop of water in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So this hopefully gives you an idea of just how small these numbers really are, and also how cautious EPA is being about the long-term risks associated with exposure to PFAS in our drinking water. ADEQ is closely following PFAS developments at the federal level, and the EPA has developed a roadmap that lays out their commitment to take specific actions. It's expected that EPA will finalize the proposed drinking water regulation within the next year. However, implementation of the final rule will occur 3 years later, giving states and water providers the time needed to address contamination. In addition to drinking water regulations, EPA has proposed designating certain PFAS as hazardous substances, which would allow the state and federal government to hold polluters accountable. And EPA has also proposed aquatic life standards to help protect wildlife in our streams and rivers. These are all just a few of the many federal PFAS developments that are expected over the next several years. So what is ADEQ doing about PFAS in Arizona? ADEQ is taking several steps to protect public health and help our state prepare for future EPA actions. Beginning in 2018, ADEQ conducted targeted screening efforts to understand the scope of PFAS impacts in Arizona. This testing included drinking water, groundwater, wastewater, and biosolids. In 2023, we began a comprehensive PFAS testing program to make sure that all of Arizona's regulated drinking water systems are sampled for PFAS in advance of federal regulations. If PFAS are detected, we can begin working right away with affected water providers to collect more data, find solutions, and identify funding to reduce exposure to PFAS. We'll have more details on this important program in just a moment. While we're actively working to protect drinking water, we're also trying to identify the most effective ways to prevent more PFAS from entering our environment. ADEQ recently piloted a program to help Arizona fire departments stop their use of PFAS-containing aqueous film-forming foams, known as AFFF. The program was allocated $395,000 during fiscal year 2023, which allowed us to take back and replace foam from over 50 fire stations, removing over 9,000 gallons of PFAS-containing foam from being used.
We had 275 gallons that we no longer were utilizing because of the risk. And a truck easily pulled up, loaded it, and unloaded that F500 that we'll now be able to distribute to our trucks.
Being involved in this program was so essential and critical for us to get rid of these chemicals.
As mentioned earlier, ADEQ is currently engaged in a comprehensive statewide effort to ensure that all regulated water systems are tested for PFAS. EPA is currently requiring that systems serving 3,300 customers or more sample their drinking water for PFAS. However, in the state of Arizona, the majority of systems serve fewer than 3,300 people and will not be sampled under the EPA program. Therefore, ADEQ has committed to using $3 million of Federal Safe Drinking Water Act funds to sample these small water systems and help ensure that all regulated water systems in Arizona will be tested. Results are generally provided to water systems within 2 to 4 weeks of sampling and are posted to the ADEQ website. If PFAS are detected, ADEQ provides the system with a PFAS toolkit, specially developed to help water systems meet the challenges this may cause. The toolkit includes information on funding, customer communication, and potential next steps. Systems are asked to follow EPA recommendations to inform their customers of the results. Our program to test small drinking water systems has a number of benefits for the systems and their customers. First, it provides PFAS sampling to systems at no charge, potentially saving them thousands of dollars. These systems can then be notified of PFAS detections much earlier than if they wait until they are required to sample under forthcoming federal regulations. For those systems with PFAS concentrations higher than the EPA's proposed limits, they can get a head start planning for expanded testing, evaluating potential solutions, and applying for federal funding if necessary. With many systems across the nation facing similar challenges, it's important that Arizona's drinking water providers begin planning to meet the new rules as soon as possible. So what can you do if PFAS is detected in your drinking water? If your water is confirmed to contain PFAS, in many cases action is not necessary immediately. You can choose to reduce your exposure as soon as possible by not using untreated water for activities like drinking, cooking, washing produce, brushing teeth, or preparing formula. However, it's generally safe to continue using untreated water for activities like washing dishes, showering, laundry, swimming, and watering your yard. If you have concerns about PFAS in your water, there are a number of at-home treatments available, such as activated carbon and reverse osmosis. You can check sources such as the NSF or your local filter installer for more information on effective treatment systems for your home. It should be noted that boiling water will not remove PFAS, and bottled water providers are not required to test for PFAS, so use caution if you choose to drink bottled water. PFAS can be a complicated topic, and this presentation is meant only as a brief introduction. If you'd like to learn more about PFAS in Arizona, please visit our My Community webpage. There you can find a map displaying the results of statewide PFAS screening and links to other helpful resources. If you'd like to talk with someone directly, we have staff available to speak with you and answer any questions you might have. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to that. I know there's a lot of information in there. I don't know if there's any questions, or I can go over real quickly what we're doing here in the county.
I have
Yeah.
a question.
Go ahead.
I see that it's only for water systems that have more than 3,300 customers. How about the small little water companies like we have up here in Green County where there's like less than 400 residents?
Yeah, that's a great question. I should clarify. So the what's happening is EPA is requiring the larger systems to sample. So that's being done under the EPA program. And that's where the state stepped in and said, most of our systems actually in the state are less than 3,300 people. And so our state program is going out to those smaller water systems and sampling them. So all the stuff you heard about the no cost testing and everything, that's actually happening for the smaller systems here in the state. That's what we're doing. Yep.
I have two questions. One, and you asked the question at the last slide, but I was wondering about bottled water. But bottled water, they don't have to test that bottled water?
That's correct. It's regulated by FDA, and so right now they don't have to test for PFAS in bottled water.
Sounds like where a lot of water comes from that people consume is bottled water.
Yeah, so it's not to say that the bottled water necessarily has PFAS in it. It's just
Yeah.
that they're not required to test. So yeah.
And has there been any testing done currently in Greeley County?
There has, yeah, and so this fact sheet, I think you have a copy of the fact sheet.
Oh, there.
And yeah, I can go through it real quick. So there's only a handful of systems that are part of the program that we're doing. So those smaller systems that we're going to be going out and testing. And we've tested most of them here in the county. Only a couple of them had PFAS detections. Both of those were below what the EPA is proposing for their limits. So if those proposed regulations go forward, then these systems wouldn't have an issue to begin with. We will be out in the county again, sampling a second time at these systems. So these could change, but for the moment, yeah, these two systems are below what EPA is proposing.
I see that Emergency Water and Electric, which provides the water for Clifton and Valencia, I know that I see that Clifton's noted, but did they test? Because there's different wells that water comes into this town. Morenci, why is it Morenci on there?
So the other Morenci Water Electric Company, it's Morenci Water Electric Company, Maine. They're actually part of the EPA testing because they're a larger system. And so they will be tested under the EPA program. I don't have results from that yet. That testing is ongoing over the course of a couple of years. So that's the discrepancy. If you see total systems and then you see systems eligible. So there's a number of things going on. One of those is if they're the larger systems part of EPA, or they could be a smaller system like a restaurant or something that won't even be regulated by this. So that's the difference between the total systems and then the systems we're actually sampling.
Thank you.
Mr. Bernard, I have okay, what's the half-life of PFAS? And fire retardants, you say, are main, the foams are main contaminants. Probably in this area, in 2011. Unfortunately, we happen to have the largest forest fire in the history of the state of Arizona, and they use fire retardants there, so half-life is real important, and then other sources. And does the ground filter this out? A lot of contaminants, unless it's the heavy metal soil percolating through, will absorb a lot of these contaminants and break it up. So, yeah,
Those are great questions. So a little bit good news to start out with. These firefighting foams that contain the PFAS, they're actually used in particular for liquid fuel fires, mostly petroleum fires. So the formulations they use for the forest fires tend to be different. They're phosphate based. And so we're not aware of those fire retardants using PFAS, and we haven't seen any kind of correlation between forest fires or any of the results that we're getting thus far. So that's a little bit of good news. In terms of half-life, yeah, these chemicals, one of the reasons we're looking at such low concentrations for these is that they really don't break down in the environment very easily. They're not passed through our bodies as easily as a lot of other contaminants. So the half-lives are much longer, months to years. And so what tends to happen is these can accumulate both in our body and in the environment, because the rate at which they're breaking down is much slower than the rate at which they're accumulating. So that's kind of the big issue and why EPA is focusing on these contaminants at this point. So when they do get into the environment, when they get into the soil will remove them to some degree before they get into the groundwater, but they'll tend to build up and they can be leached. And so it really is a long-term issue when these get out in the environment.
So one more question. So they have to be treated like heavy metals, which once in the body, it's hard to get rid of them. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's difficult to get through it. And, you know, we showed the graph that it's not impossible. So it's not like they'll never come out of our bodies. But yeah, it is definitely an issue, which is why the EPA is setting these limits so low. All right, great. Yeah, thank you. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to us or our community liaison.
And once again, thank you for coming here, and we appreciate your outreach here. And please keep us informed, and we appreciate you working with the systems because this is relatively new. I mean, I just started hearing about this about 2 years ago, and now we appreciate your attention to this. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Shui, County Librarian, and always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Supervisor Lunt, Supervisor Campbell, Supervisor Gomez. My name is Karen Sui, and I'm the Greenlee County Librarian. Our annual report this year, once again, grants are the highlight of our annual report. We received our usual $25,000 from states in aid grant, which gives us about 40% of our operating budget for this past year. We applied for and were awarded 2 LSTA grants this year. One was for $3,000 to develop citizen science kits for checkout. There are 6 kits at every library building, including 2 for measuring light in the night sky, 2 for observing pollinators in the area, and 2 for examining biodiversity. The data collected is uploaded onto a site through a simple app that you can put on your phone. And it includes the Greenlee County statistics as part of an international database used by scientists and researchers all over the world. So again, one of our goals this year was to put Greenlee County out there. The second LSTA grant that we did was for $13,840 to create Make It, Take It kits, or Timmy kits. They are based on STEAM projects. Items are purchased and kits are created, and those let patrons come, pick up the kits and take them at home. They work with their children. Some are leveled for adults, some are for younger children, different ages every month that we do it. Duncan and Clifton libraries make 60 kits a month. And we are really trying to make sure that Blue gets some benefits from our library grant funding too, and they get 20 kits a month. And we'd really like to thank the Sheriff's Department. Every time the sheriff would go to the Blue, he takes a big box of stuff up for us to make sure that those kids benefit from those too. A grant for $7,777 from FMI enabled the libraries this year to buy self-contained STEAM-based learning tablets called launch pads. We purchased 61 tablets. They were split up between all 3 libraries, and they are so popular. The kids just love them. And again, they're self-contained, so there's no internet problems that, you don't have to worry about where your kids go. Everything is there. Duncan Library received 3 grants on their own this year, one for $46,022. Last year enabled the summer reading program to provide snacks and some fantastic prizes for children who read and took an accelerated reading progress test at the beginning and end of the summer. Some of the prizes including basketballs, different kinds of STEAM toys, books, and even earpods. AirPods. Okay.
I always get it wrong.
Yeah, I know. My grandson always looks at me and says, "You don't know that yet." Okay. A second grant for $5,000 allowed food to be purchased along with books for adults who attended a cooking class done by British Navy. And the books were discussed. It was called Feed the Mind, Feed the Body. And the books were usually having to do with something of mental health problems or issues. A third grant came from the Community Food Bank of Tucson and the Albertson Foundation. This grant provided no funds, but they shipped prepackaged breakfast for children ages 0 to 18. Volunteers packed the food every week, and each Monday or Tuesday it was handed out at the library. We sponsored 50 of these kits, and the program will last 8 weeks over the summer, and I believe next week is the last week for that. Duncan Library and Clifton Library were both chosen by the Arizona State Library to receive funding to get STEAM to Go kits. $7,000 was available, and each library chose $3,500 worth of kits. And again, those are really popular, being checked out now, along with our backpack program, which was from 2 years ago, has really taken off. The libraries discussed social and community-centered projects, such as their mission statement goals state. The group involved came up with participating in Project Linus. Jackie Hale, one of our board members, agreed to head the project, since the libraries were not supposed to actually sponsor that project. It had to be an individual in the county. Project Linus collects handmade quilts, afghans, fleece blankets, etc., to hand out to children ages 18 and under who experience an ER situation or a traumatic event. The Duncan and Clifton libraries are the drop-off points for the finished blankets, and we've also held classes there to teach people how to do those kind of things. The Greenlee chapter will cover Greenlee, Graham, Cochise County, and will provide blankets to emergency responders, police, EMS, fire departments, and crisis intervention personnel, and the emergency rooms at Morenci, Mount Graham, Wilcox, and Benson hospitals. Right now, we've received 46 blankets and are getting ready to distribute them. One final thing I'd like to mention, a few years ago, we had geocaches all over the county. I'm not sure if you've ever done geocaching. Okay. If you've never done it, it's kind of like hunting for a treasure using your phone app or a GPS. It's really fun. It's really cool. Inside every cache, when we first placed it, was a travel bug, which the first person to find it was to take with them and hide it somewhere else. We were able to track that bug, and this summer, one made it to Hawaii, One was in England at a big geocache convention. One was in Mexico, and one was in Japan. When they log that bug on the site, they get to see where it originated. So once again, we were able to put Greenlee County in their map. Do you have any questions on the report that I can clarify?
Oh,
Great info.
Mitch, you're, I don't know, if I'm gonna show my, age, but, remember El Campo used to have the big buck, the buck stretcher. I think under your guidance, the Greenlee County Library System is the buck stretcher. You work tirelessly to give as many benefits to the residents of Greenlee County as possible, and this board is eternally grateful for your efforts and your endeavors. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just like to thank all of our staff at those libraries too.
Yes.
And if anybody is not a library member, a card holding member, we have some new things coming up that you have to have a library card to use. It's going to be a free music service like Spotify, but it's called Freeble. That starts this fall, but you have to have a card, and you can apply online on our website. Okay. I also left some pens back here from the library that's doing some promotions for the public this year. So grab a pen on your way out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to agenda item 10, Ms. Cathcart.
Good morning, gentlemen. Joanne Cathcart, Greenlee County Assessor. And I want to introduce you to one of our newest projects, and it is called Project Care. Project Care has to do with our exemptions, our senior freeze, etc. You ask why Project Care, what does that mean? During the 2022 legislative session, an amendment was passed at Arizona Revised State Statute 42.11111 to include disabled veterans. Years ago, legislature had changed it in fixing something, and they had dropped our veterans off. So in 2022, that was changed back, and now our disabled veterans are able to qualify for an exemption. We also have a newly widowed or disabled property owners that are not usually aware of the tax relief programs offered through our office. And senior citizens that are rarely know about the senior freeze as well. So we wanted to take it upon ourselves to really go out and encourage our citizens to utilize these programs. The purpose of Project Care is, number one, raise awareness of the programs available through the assessor's office. Help reduce the tax burden of eligible property owners, and assist property owners that may be at their most vulnerable point. What Project Care stands for is Community Awareness Tax Relief Effort, and how we're spreading the word. We are mailing inserts in our notice of values as well as the tax bills. Thank you, Diane. We use the Greenlee County Facebook page, assessor's website. Our flyer distributions, which you all should have received, our little flyer there. We distribute to the libraries, Meals on Wheels, senior citizen centers, food banks, post offices, health department, Stafford Funeral Homes, and the American Legion. We're measuring our success, which has been a great success so far. We hope to see a 20% increase in the number of inquiries regarding the assessor's tax relief programs. We conducted a brief survey of property owners as they called or came in to ask questions. And we've experienced a 200% increase in inquiries regarding our tax relief program. So we're very excited. And I have to tell a little story about a little gentleman. I don't remember his name. And he was just absolutely elated. And it really and truly meant a difference of buying medication and paying his tax bill or food. So these programs are so helpful in our communities. In any way we can get the word out to our community that this tax relief is available, please share with your neighbors, share with your loved ones. Just share it. It is an income required program. However, I feel it's very liberal. And so we really do try to step out and try to help our community.
Any questions?
I take it that brochure, gives all the.
It
guidelines
does.
and everything.
It does. It talks about who qualifies, the senior freeze, which is wonderful. The senior freeze is a little bit more complicated because you have to provide 3 years of different income information. It's very easy. We help. Pam is wonderful with our senior freeze. My staff is fantastic. Definitely willing to help anybody and everybody that comes for inquiries for the program.
Once again, thank you. Thank you for doing this, you know, veterans, any way we can help them, or even the elderly.
Oh, absolutely.
A
Something.
lot of them are on fixed incomes, and so every little bit helps as you so.
Absolutely. Something we also do in our office, and I really want to shout from the rooftop for my staff. I have the world's best staff. I'm not biased at all. However, if an elderly person or a person who is ill cannot get something notarized, we are all a notary in my office, and we will go out to help those people in need who need a notary that are not able to get to the office or get to a bank, etc., to have something notarized.
Great.
Public service.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate the partnership as well with you and the treasurer and getting that information out. I mean, that's wonderful. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, we'll go to agenda item 11, and Steve, I don't see.
He is not here. I've seen him. He's submitted a letter on behalf of the Tourism Council. As you recall, the request was to help pay for a landscape architect design. I believe the West, whatever it was, West something, is the group they're planning on using, Westland. And so when I visited with him about a week and a half ago, they were hoping to move forward on this before prices increase. And so they asked if the board would consider this after we passed the budget. So
So we can act on this without him.
certainly, I mean, it's simply allowing the expenditure funds you budgeted to this purpose. By 30-second review, this is to help develop an architectural plan of the river that they would then work towards building out over the next several years.
Okay, well, with that said, can I make the motion to. Okay, so I so move that we approve regarding the financial support on the development of the San Francisco River Revitalization Plan. Do I indicate the amount that we had?
Yes, it was 20,000.
Yeah. At $20,000.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. At this time, we've been in session for about 2 hours. I'm gonna take a 5-minute break if it's okay.
Unless there's a line in the back.
Almost.
We'll see, yeah, they're gonna make their decisions.
You had to shut it off.
It's recording right now.
Okay. Go ahead and call this Board of Supervisors meeting back to order, and we'll go to agenda item 12, and Tony, I didn't mean to cut you off, but.
You're so excited to jump up there, huh?
Ready to get it over with.
Good morning, Tony Hines, Public Works Manager. Item A, we're looking to go out for bids on a 45-foot man lift for the fairgrounds and the shop and stuff like that, so we can reach heights without having to rent one. This will be a used unit that we're gonna look for through probably Empire, United Rentals, some of those that they have.
Any questions? If not, a motion be in order.
Well, I so move that we approve the solicit bids for the one used 45-foot man lift as presented.
I'll second that.
There a motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We'll go to 12B, and Sheriff, you've asked. We're on agenda item 12B, Sheriff, and you asked to address this. Yes, sir.
All right, well, that 5 minutes was quick, or I thought it was kind of an estimated 5 minutes, with bathroom lines, so. We're on 12B, you said?
Yes.
Yes, 12B.
Okay. On this one, what I had, Tim Sumner, Greenlee County Sheriff, what I just wanted to say on this one is that, the PPV SUVs that are on the agenda for today, I just wanted to point out that, again, your procurement policy and guideline, as you know, for vehicles, this is, not the way to do that. It is in violation, as I pointed out before, about the enterprise when that was discussed, how I'm submitting requests to come before you for vehicles, and those are being usurped, and it's going under the guise of Tony Hines, the fleet manager. So again, look at your own procurement policy. You say you follow it. However, I'm trying to follow it, and it says that I'm the one that's supposed to be bringing that to you. So I'm just wanting to state that publicly. I'm in disagreement with how it's going as far as the procurement. When it brought forth the enterprise solution, of course, that got shifted over to Tony. We were the ones that were limited to 3 minutes to discuss it. I'm limited yet again, and we truly can't discuss our needs with you because you're trying to usurp the authority there and you're going outside your own policy. So other than that, I would like to have a discussion about our true vehicle needs within the sheriff's office, with you, with the fleet manager, with your administrator, or whomever, but yet, again, just following policy would be nice. Thank you.
So on item B, we're looking to purchase 4 PPV SUVs. Those will be 4x4s. 2 3/4 ton 4x4 extended cab pickups, 2 midsize SUVs, and 1 1/2 ton pickup through the enterprise fleet management.
And I have one quick, why are we leasing and not, generally don't we purchase?
Normally we do. Yeah, I did. I put lease.
Purchase from, so I was gonna ask that too.
Yeah, I said purchase, but permission to lease those vehicles. We can go either way. We can go out for bid on those if we want to purchase them, or we can go through the enterprise system. The enterprise system that we have in place was basically, we're not going to know how that's going to work for us until we go 5 years and we get a return on some of the investments that we did.
Mr. Chairman, lease. We looked at
But
leasing for enterprise because we couldn't get the police package vehicles any other source last fiscal year. That may have opened up, but that was why we went with enterprise to begin with. In fact, we got a few other vehicles from them because we could not get any other source to bid. We went looking for them.
Yes.
Yeah, I think last year we did that because you couldn't get them, but I don't know if that's the case now. I would like to see a comparison of, you know, that lease to purchase, you know, comparison.
Okay.
So I think in this case, I would welcome us to go out to bid to see what we can get and compare that cost. You know, whether that's a lifetime cost or 5-year cost, whatever that is,
Right.
to say this is what it's gonna cost for a lease, this is what it's gonna cost for us to purchase. And then we make that decision and go forth.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, I did have those comments. Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Should we table this item?
We can table that one particular part of it if you wish.
Right, so I would move to table agenda 12B until we have the purchase information.
Mr. Lees, if I can clarify, do you want to table all aspects of it? Are we looking at leasing all of these, Tony?
That's the way it's written, yes.
So it says,
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
so am I clear? Yeah, okay.
And just as a note, we have gone out for like the investigator's truck for the sheriff's office, and it did come in normal time, 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
So that was through a bid and through Kempton's.
So just to be clear with my motion is that I am moving to table agenda item 12B until we have purchase information on these vehicles that are being requested for this motion to lease.
Correct.
And I think I cut off the second.
And I second that. Motion is second. And the table, I think it's done. So. You have the marching orders, we will go to.
I think you still have to, since I made a motion, I think you still have to vote on it.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please.
Indicate
I say aye, okay, motion
all right.
passes and so ordered, thank you for keeping me straight. We'll go to 12C.
So item C is the purchase of a tractor from Empire through the Omnia purchasing contract. This tractor will replace the tractor down in Duncan at the arena. It's an old John Deere that's on its last legs.
Do we, Mr. Chairman, do we have an anticipated value?
Yeah.
I
to
didn't
get
see
the-
it on the attachment.
Let's see.
Oh, 49,475.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the total for the tractor, but we're getting 40,000 in trade-in.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
That's what-
it?
That's what it shows, yeah.
See how fast I can make that.
I'll be fast. I so move that we approve the purchase of the one MF 5711D tractor from Empire for the fairgrounds using the Omnia purchasing contract at a price tag of 49,475 with a trade-in of 40 grand.
I second that.
Here we have a motion and second. Is there any discussion? Where do I sign up? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will now go to agenda item 12D. And Tony, just for clarification, and I'm sure on 12D and E, you had the same, you had the background material, at least on mine, for the fairground for both of those.
Yeah, the attachments for D and E are the same
As
as C.
that's
I got different ones.
Yeah, that may have been an attachment problem from our end.
okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so item D would be the permission to purchase a 950M loader for the landfill using the Omnia purchasing contract also through Empire.
What's the total and what's the trade?
The total $304,432. That is after the $118,000 trade-in value.
And what's the life expectancy of that?
We were doing the lease program for 5 years on those, and this last one we stretched to 7 years.
Okay. Well, if that's it, I so move that we approve the purchase of the 950M loader from Empire for the landfill using the Omnia purchasing contract at a price of $304,342 with a trade-in of $118,000.
That was 432, correct?
304, 432, right?
304, 432.
432, okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Now go to 12E.
Okay, item E, we're looking to purchase a backhoe, a dozer, a 930 loader for the roads department using the Omnia purchasing contract through Empire also.
I'm gonna ask you the same question.
But hey,
Numbers?
Numbers, yes, please.
please, that.
Okay, backhoe. It's going to be 199,157. No trade-in on that one.
Okay. How about the those D3?
No, but probably.
Dozer is gonna be 137,071. After an $88,200 trade-in.
Okay.
The
Loader.
930 loader. 146,365. After a 152,000 trade-in.
Okay. Well, I so move. That we approve the purchase of the 440 backhoe at a price tag of $199,157. No trade-in. And a D3 dozer at a price tag of $137,071. With a trade-in of $88,200. And the 930M loader. At a price tag of $146,365. With a trade-in of $152,000 as presented.
I'll second that.
A motion, the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very, very much. And now we'll go to 12F.
So this is a presentation of what we've done for facilities, fleet and parks for the last fiscal year. Next one. Should have changed that one. It takes forever. For facilities at the fairgrounds and 3 parks, we take care of 25 buildings. We did 7. Both of those have been decreased since previous year. These are kind of the daily and quarterly and monthly things that we do. We do daily pump room inspections and we do daily facility inspections. We do a weekly playground inspections in the parks. Those are all documented. Monthly office, building, SWIPs, fire extinguisher inspections, and the elevator inspections. Quarterly generator is what we do. Empire also comes out and does quarterly testing and everything on all the generators. We do yearly building, fire alarm, fire sprinkler, and backflow tests. So in the parks, we have Loma Linda Park, York Park, and the Duncan Park. There's our well that we got drilled just recently in the Loma Linda Park. I talked to the drill guy yesterday and he should be out here next week to put the pump in and the tanks and stuff like that. Unless they have more emergencies. They would have been out this week, but they had emergencies in Safford, so. In the parks, we've done 65 service requests. Totaling $51,392.11. At $790 per request. So in the fleet department, we've done 804 work orders on 129 units for $459,421 total cost. 3,561 per vehicle and 571 average per work order. So the work orders we've had from 2021, we had 976. Those went down 8.5% to 21-22. And then we dropped another 10% from 22 to 23.
Tony, and what would you feel like the reason that our work orders are going down? Is it better maintenance, better equipment?
Probably better equipment. We have the same, we do the same maintenance. It's, you know, all the same. I don't know. That's a good question.
Preventing, you feel like you're doing a better job preventing maintenance?
We do the same job. I mean, we get them in when we can, you know, on the 3,000 for police vehicles, 5,000 for everybody else. We go through them as we do the regular maintenance, so we can catch some things there. So that would be included in that work order and not added to another work order. So that, yeah, could be. And a couple of new vehicles here and there that don't need it also.
It's good.
But the cost per work order has gone up. So we know that, you know, wages went up, that's one part of it. Parts prices went up, the availability of them went up or went down. But the price actually went up, so we increased that. We also increased the cost per vehicle, same reasoning. Parts price increase, wages increase, stuff like that, that is on the work order. So this is the some of the places we do outside work on. Our outside work has increased also. In 2021, it went down to 21-22, 30%, but then we're back up almost 40% for this year. This year we had some major stuff that we had to do. Ambulances went down, we had to take out. We did some transmissions in police cars, stuff like that. So that's why it went up. So our recent projects that we've been working on is fairgrounds improvements. What we're trying to do on here is get the water away from the building. You can see the damage that we have on the bottom of the siding. A few years ago, we did redo the whole roof on it, so we can get that out of there. This shows the cement that we did on this side of the 4-H building, and it's actually sloped away from the building. The other one wasn't, so we corrected that. We also put a drain at the corner of the 4-H building that drains out to the canal at the edge of the property. So all that standing water is basically getting shot out now. So, and then we have plans for happy finger. We have plans for an awning on this. We also had plans to put all the coolers on the backside and go to industrial coolers. That quote came back at about 76,000, so we're looking at other options. But that's basically what's going to happen there. And then once we get all the coolers on the other side, we'll talk about reskinning the building and getting rid of the damages stuff on the bottom, making it look a little better too. Okay, now. So a lot of what we had to do at the fairgrounds is electric. We were popping breakers on Vendors Row. We couldn't keep crock pots going in the I building during the barbecues and stuff like that. So most of the stuff that we've done has been for the electric. Vendors Row, we put in new RV pedestals instead of just the outlets that were there. that'll run off of a new transformer and a new service entry panel. So that's specifically on its own. We shouldn't have any breakage problems on that when they come in. Next. Also along the lines of electric, we separated the arena. We put a new transformer out there and a new box. So the arena lights and crow's nest all on its own electric. So we shouldn't have any issues with that. The lights on the arena, we redid for the second time, but they're better now. So haven't had any complaints on that, I don't believe. The chute area has been redone. They have a little bit more to do on the walkway to the other side where they do the cattle roping and stuff. So a lot of that stuff has been done, and I think the arena is much better than what it used to be. This is the I building in the north kitchen that we're redoing right now. We're just about on our finishing leg of that. We will have it done by the fair this year. We've done all the digging out behind the building to put in new sewer lines, new water lines, new gas line. That's where we ran into the problem of finding the septic tank back there that we never found. So we have the town, we're helping them dig the trench for the sewer line that's going to come up from Packard Wash up to us, and then we can hook our sewer line in from there. That's becoming a nightmare. We're digging by the Sproles driveway right there, and we're finding all kinds of stuff. Old ditches going across there, phone lines that are abandoned that are still there. We're finding all of those. So we're in the drywall stage on the I buildings. The drywall is complete now. They're taping and texturing this week. Go ahead. This is the drywall. This is the north kitchen on this side. The air conditioners are put in. So basically all we have left to do are the floors, and the flooring contractor is scheduled to be here on the 7th of August. Should take them a week and a half to grind the floor, get it prepped, and put the flooring down. More of the office. This one's Lindsay's office. This one is the backside of the
Lindsay's office. This isn't the office she's in now. This will be the office during fairs.
During fair, correct.
Money and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it has a money counting room on the end here, and it's got a bathroom attached. The bathrooms have been totally redone. New plumbing from the cement pad out, new fixtures, new lights and everything in it. So
This eventually become her office.
I think she'll spend a lot of time in there. Yeah, it's got a bathroom.
I was gonna say it has a bathroom.
And it'll work. We're getting the phones and the internet connected over there also, so shouldn't be an issue to do that. We have the outside all sided except for the south kitchen, which we left open for the junior rodeo events and any other events that come up. And that'll be painted or stained next week. So some of the stuff we've done in the jail, Commander Attaway had asked that a lot of the locks be rekeyed the same, so we ordered the kits to redo those. We had the ligature resistant fixtures done in one of the holding cells. Putting in a new toilet in an old building where an old toilet was plumbed was not fun, not easy, but it's there. Other things that we've done to the jail is small thing is we've done LED lights on the poles out here. We were going back, replacing lights on there constantly. It was just like a regular thing. Once we did all of those in LEDs, we haven't been back and touched one in 3 years. So they're worth the money on the initial thing. And those were just bulbs. It's not changing the fixture or anything. So that was an easy one. The shower units that we have are putting in there are air troll, means it's controlled by air that when you push the button. The showers that they have in there now are basically toilet valves that they just push a button and it's metered how long it stays on. We weren't having too good of luck with those, rebuilding them and everything, and they're just old, and we've replaced some and they still have issues. So we're going to this type of shower in the pods. So we finished off the flooring in the second floor with the emergency management office over here. We have completed all the courtroom lights, which is, look how many there are on there. We rebuilt those and did all those in LED. So the second floor courthouse completely done in LEDs. We're working on the middle floor and then we'll work on the bottom floor. Get all those changed. I think Brian yesterday did this hallway here and all LEDs. So. And we have our CDL school. We have 2 employees. Tim Christner is our driving instructor and Derek Martinez is our teacher, school teacher part of it. We have 35 subjects that you put them through and they have to pass with an 80% or more. We've had 2 pass, we've had 2 leave before they got done, and we have 2 in there right now. So some of the things you do, you go through the class first, they get their permit. Then they come back and do the driving portion. They have to be proficient in straight line backing, offset backing, and blindside parallel parking. So once we get that set, I'll give them a driving test. We go into Safford and do all kinds of stuff on that. If they pass that, we set them up with the actual test, driving test in the city of Sierra Vista that we have a intergovernmental agreement with. And once they pass that, they have their CDL and they're ready to go.
Tony, the state no longer comes to Safford and gives CDL testing there.
The written test they do, not the driving test. Yeah. Yeah, they take all their written tests in Safford. Unless scheduling is different. It was every other Thursday. I'm not sure what it is now. But we've had a few that would go to Tucson to take the test and stuff like that. So.
Well, thank you.
That's what we've been doing.
Good stuff.
All right. Progress.
Keep it up, thank you.
We're getting there. Thank you.
Any questions? Tony? Okay, thank you. We'll now go to agenda item 13 and Mr. Adams, he's not here. And so Derek, can you turn that over to you or?
I can introduce it, and if we need to, Mr. Griffith will help fill in the blanks. As you know, at our last meeting, Mr. Adams tendered his resignation effective at the end of the month, July 31st. He has decided that best for his family, he would locate back and take another job out of the county. He has recommended Gary Griffith to take his place. Mr. Griffith and his family relocated to the Duncan area and are living there. And as a sort of historical PTSD, I called and asked, register to vote and all that. He said, yep, all that's done. And so any event, I would add my recommendation to Mr. Adams. It's not necessary, certainly, but I've known and worked with Mr. Griffith for decades, and he is an outstanding attorney. And I think will provide the leadership that office needs and looks forward to. There are challenges ahead, but he is up to them. And so I would add my recommendation, Mr. Adams, that you appoint Mr. Griffith to succeed Scott Adams as the Green County Attorney.
Or is there any questions or you got the letter you read?
Yeah, just a comment that yeah, the letter was very positive towards you, Gary, and Scott did really well at outlining your many years of experience and his wholehearted confidence in you stepping in and filling that role. So who might argue with him, but.
Agreed. So with that, if there's no further discussion, motion will be in order.
Well, I move that we, well, let me just read through here, but I move that we approve of the appointment of Gary Griffith as Greenlee County Attorney upon Mr. Adams' resignation effective at close of business July 31st, 2023.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? And if not, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Aye, motion passes. And Mr. Griff, welcome.
Thank you.
We look forward to working with you and we appreciate your expertise that you will bring to the audience. So thank you. With that, we'll go to agenda item 14, Mr. Larson.
Mr. Larson is out of town and asked that I present this on his behalf. This is in furtherance of one of our designated ARPA projects to establish a permanent GPS base for surveying in Greenlee County. This is the purchase of the primary components of that system. I learned that GNSS is a global navigation satellite system. And you'll notice as well, this is a sole source purchasing. Other equipment in the area, as well as other investments the county has made, are consistent with the Trimble product, and the quote you got is from the Trimble authorized dealer in Arizona, as explained in the attached data. Trimble keeps pretty tight on their new equipment geographic sales areas, so we only have one source for this. But what this will allow us to do is to look into 2 additional satellite systems, satellite arrays that are in the skies above us. That will help, it'll give us both quicker and more accurate data, be able to navigate there. Reed is also, Mr. Larson is also partnered with the National Geodetic Survey. I wish I could tell you a whole lot about what that means. But they're excited about having another GPS permanent base in the area. They're partnering with us in design. And so the equipment list, the invoice or the polls that you have in front of you would get us the equipment necessary. You'll notice that it's less than the 65,000 that we budgeted or that we have set aside in the ARPA for this type of work. I think there may be some other costs, but this is the bulk of it. So about 32,000. I don't have the thing in front of me, but essentially this is the equipment we need to get that operation running. You recall the impetus for this is that this will lower the cost of surveys throughout Greenlee County. And we moved locating up on Guthrie Peak down to the airport, and we'll use a repeater system to get it out to all of the county.
We said 65. Did you say 65?
65 is what was earmarked in ARPA, but as we bring ARPA funds, as we bring those projects forward, we have asked you to approve them specifically. So in this case, we just approved what has been proposed. That is
$32,312.94.
Correct. And then if there's equipment after that, then that'll be dealt with separately.
Okay. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, I move that we approve the purchase of the survey equipment and materials for NSS CORS base from Altera Central with budgeted ARPA funds not to exceed the amount of $32,312.94.
I second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. We'll now go to agenda item 15 and A, and Mr. Crandall has asked to speak on this and also the sheriff.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mark Crandall, Greenlee County Sheriff's Office. I only have one thing, as soon as I can get to my page, that I would like to be looked at and possibly even changed. And I brought it up to Austin Adams the other day when we had a meeting. And it's moving patrol sergeant down to 17, and then I saw the new one where the jail commander has been added, which is really helpful. Thank you. I'd like to see that one move down to 19, and then the patrol lieutenant move down to 19. So patrol sergeant moved down to 17, jail commander moved down to 18, and then the patrol lieutenant moved down to 19. I know it's a work in progress. This is the second one I've seen. So I hope to work with Austin in the near future to see what we can get figured out as far as the pay scales with the sergeants and jail commander and the lieutenant. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, Tim Sumner, Greenlee County Sheriff. First of all, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, yes, I take the time to, Mr. Chairman, to thank people. I want to thank Austin publicly again for the work on this, because and the budget, like you've talked about, I thank everyone involved in that process throughout, all the elected officers, department heads, of course, the administration and county administrator, because these are big challenges, and these types of things are big tasks, to take on. And so I've said that oftentimes in the limited forum of 3 minutes. I appreciate, matter of fact, Jeremy Ford at one point told me, Tim, you're never going to win any of these arguments in here because you're limited on forum. It's a rule of attorneys. You know that you can't win in a limited forum when your hands are tied to a certain time frame and the other party's not. They have unlimited time. So it is what it is. But I do want to think, and I do that. So sometimes you may think I get up here and just point out the issues, the discrepancies, the errors I see, because that's the only time I really have to do so. But I do want to thank Austin for that. I also want to thank him for adding, we brought about 4 or 5 positions that were missing from that initial proposal. And so I appreciate that it went to the electeds. It would have been nice for that to be done in the first place. So I appreciate that correspondence, communication, and thank you for meeting with us. And myself and Chief Deputy Crandall, I do appreciate that. And so those things do go a long ways, and we're trying to work together and get those things done. Chief Deputy Crandall already spoke about one issue. I had another one I wanted to look at briefly. And if you look at your scale, I noticed that all positions have gone up except for one. I also noticed the next item says economic development. Not sure what that's about. I'll discuss that when I get there. But that's the only position that went down about 12K. It looks like everything else has gone up in increments, anywhere from 2,600, 3,500, 5,000, 15,000, 7,000, 30,000. The biggest jump, of course, is at the bottom line. So when you look at number 20 and 21, the difference between 20 and 21 is 87,000, and 21. So one step up the scale is 117,000. This is for entry level starting on the new scale is presented before you today. That's a pretty big jump, $30,000 for one step. When you look at all of their steps and look at the increments and what the jumps are there, it's pretty significant. And if you look back at this position, well, county administrator is a new position to be added on, but like the county engineer was on there before. And the county engineers, when you look at this scale in general, the 21 scale, there's really compare apples to apples with 2019 versus this one. But we went from 64,000 up to this 117, which is a $52,000 increase, 80% increase. The high end of that scale is 174,000. That went up $82,000. Is an 89% increase. That's the only one that had such significant increases like that. I mean, the other ones are not so. I mean, if you look at the increases going along, maybe there should be a 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 that are blank, and those positions fall in at like 28 or 29 because it's such a big jump in there. It just doesn't make a lot of sense on that piece. And so I just wanted to ask about that. Also, the only one that's under $1,000, $853 increase is number 16, the patrol sergeant. And again, that's one that we like to see moved up. And so that's all I have for that time. And I just want to end on saying thanks again. And I appreciate all the work. Looking forward to this every year being approved and moved on. So thank you for your time, gentlemen. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
So I wanted to start this item. I'm going over this little a little preview of this, and we were talking on Friday. But going over kind of what the salary development is like. We'll kind of go through several things. Okay. So the first one is duties to the board. It's your guys' duty to fill vacancies, in those offices across the county. And if you go into UMAC talks very specifically about setting salary and wages. You know, in this case, you guys have hired an HR person to say, hey, look at those wages. So that's kind of what I'm doing based on your duties at. So conversation strategy. So when we're looking at this strategy, kind of the idea behind how I'm building these compensation scales. And that one you have in front of you is just a slide update that you got this morning. We're going based off of market basis. So we're looking at what is the relative markets outside of here. Our biggest comparison we're using is going to be those other small counties, right? That's going to be the AGLE surveys. That's going to be looking at typically Apache, Gila, Santa Cruz, and La Paz. Those are typically our wages that we're looking at. Right? Not all the time, but those are the majority of it. You're also going to see FMI on that. Some of those positions are going to have very similar positions to FMI. We go through this, you're going to see a little bit more when we talk about the way we match up to this. We do a combination. So we talk about match. A lot of times we're matching small counties, we're looking at AGLE, we're trying to get in that average of those smalls. That's kind of our design to look at that. Some of those we're going to be market leaders on. And those are going to be relative. Typically, when I talk about that, we go back to this being the market-based compensation strategy. Is what does it take to get those people? We struggle with retention for a long time. Getting people filled, we still have to do better, right? But that's because now we are market leaders when it comes to that. We talk about lag, we're pretty much always going to lag behind. We don't have the capacity and funds to pay what they pay. When I look at those though, and when I talk about lag, that's when we typically become market leaders in small counties. These those ones that have direct positions, meaning our admin looked at this year, our public works operators. These are positions that they could go apply for 3-4 and start a job tomorrow making more money. And then we just try to close that gap where we're not talking a $5 an hour gap, we're talking a $1 to $2 an hour gap. So with this, we talk about this, we're looking at the data behind this, is looking at all those small counties, looking at Freeport wages, using those as reference points. Majority of the time, we're going to be trying to sit in that match category. We're going to be looking at those small counties and say, here's what we need. On those positions that are more competitive with the hill, we're probably going to look towards market here. That way we can be a little more competitive again, which we're going to lag. And when we talk about market leader, we're not talking necessarily about for the highest paid of all the counties. Some positions we are very close, but we're talking about market leaders. We're in the upper 25%. Right? So we're one of the top. We're not necessarily top. When we're talking about match, we fit in that average point. So we average out those counties. This is where we sit. If you guys have questions as we go through, feel free to ask. So one of the things we're doing, we're creating grades, we're looking at job descriptions. So we're trying to look at what those basic are, whether that's customer service duties, that's answering the phone, that's taking notes, that's entering data. What are those basic duties? So we're trying to get one of the things, we talked about a little bit in our meeting on Friday, is getting good job descriptions. Make sure we have good information about what those jobs do. Once we do that, we kind of do a job evaluation. So that's saying, again, what are the responsibilities, what are the accountability for these types of duties? When we're looking at those duties, we're also looking at market to say other jobs that have similar duties pay X. When we're doing that, we're going on to what we call benchmarks. We're looking at jobs. We're trying to find jobs that have about 80% similarities. These jobs are closely related. We're not going to find jobs that are 100%. We understand that. With some of our discussion back to admin, we all have a little bit of different roles as admins, but they're generically admins. That goes back to the same thing we're talking about benchmarking the jobs. We're looking at those. Luckily for us, we do have a group like ACO that puts out a good survey that gives us a lot of good information that we have a lot of the same jobs. Sometimes smaller counties pick up a little extra functions, but we still have a basic premise that 80% typically lines out well. Some of the discussions, we go to the next one, we're talking about outliers. Some of those we mentioned about some of those counties that they are outliers. We look at some of the positions and they're $12,000 under anyone else. Right, some of those we're gonna go through and adjust out. If they are truly outliers, you mentioned that, you know, when I mentioned admins, we pulled Apache County out because they are a drastic outlier. And what those adjustments are, again, some of those, when we have those major outliers, we'll make adjustments. Some of that is gonna go back to an ACO usually has pretty good notes on it. Some of those positions aren't what they appear. Right, some of them may be an admin supervisor. They may be something else, but they put them in that same category. So those are some of the outliers that also might get adjusted out. And whole job slotting. So this is kind of the way we do it is probably the simplest way to do it. And this means we're taking what that job scope is, what the current pay is, what the market, and that's how we're placing that salary scale, kind of as a whole. There's several other ways to do it. I think I spend more time doing this and doing it that way. You might refine to a little more of a point system that ties it a little bit better. But for right now, full job slot is kind of what I'm doing when I'm creating this city. We're looking at this as a full picture, and this is where it should fit approximately. We talked about salary ranges right now. Salary ranges, that is the midpoint to the maximum. So that is what that entire range is. And what you see with most of them that go anywhere from 50, but sometimes to 80. Ours is 40 to 50. Typically what you see with that is as your grades start, we typically at a lower percentage. In our case, we start at 40. As that progresses, really about the time you start hitting the real exempt roles, that usually goes to a 50% grade. And you'll see that across organizations, that's fairly common. A lot of times that number goes higher as you go up, right? It may start at 30 and it is 70. Ours right now is based between 40 and 50. Right. So bring up the scale. You guys have any questions on what that's looking like for design? So each one of these positions, we're going through, we're doing that job description, we're trying to match it against the benchmark. ACO usually, right? That's our prime one, and then sometimes Freeport, we have those direct competition jobs. And then that's kind of what we're using as our baseline. So here's what we're trying to be, either market, meet market, or we're trying to, you know, be a market leader. That way we can afford to cut that pay gap again of the operators and admin. Some of this is helpful when we have positions that are more of the same. So it's easy to reference when you have those kind of odd positions that aren't as easy to reference. This strategy becomes a lot harder because then you're making a lot more guesses to where that position fits versus having that nice 80% benchmark that says here's where the position fits. So some of the things you'll probably see as things go forward. Ideally, we try to get into more of those benchmark goals. And you'll see a lot of things when you look at that grade. We talked about we had 28 or 29, and now we're down to 21. We'll see some of that tighten up. More will fit into those groups. You guys have any questions on that?
Well, not yet. I mean, until you're ready to share that.
Let me share that.
I wanted to go over what Officer Vandal brought up on those 3 positions. Ask the why. Yes, we do.
Yeah, so we went and go back and look at those to say where do they fit. So when again, some of those positions were left off, right? We didn't have them in there. We added some of those in there. So when we go back to add those in, what I'm doing is I'm going to look and see what the reference is. And so, for instance, on man database position there. That was a hard position. There's not a good necessary benchmark out there. So what I look at on his wage, again, at least not on the ACO. Over his, when I placed him into the scale, I went through and looked at what's the relative time and where should he fit on that scale, which we can put him approximately where that is. Again, this is not perfect. This is something that gets trying to go on. I'm sure if it comes to future years and have better data, that may adjust a little bit. But I think that's a slot that's most where it should be. When we look at, for instance, the two that were mentioned is, let's see. So right here, so we have a lieutenant patrol, and we have sergeant patrol. So when I looked at those, after Mark brought those up, when I looked at those and I looked at them against the counties, we fit in that category, right? We fit in that category there. We're not horrible. We're very close to what other counties have at those four. So if I look at the market, right, it's when I look at where they're placed on their grades, I don't see a reason to move them. Otherwise, we're going to be market leader. And what I mean by market leader is above even 25% of market, which we haven't traditionally done. Any other questions on any of the grades on here?
Well, I think my basic question is that, Mark, you had brought it up, your request for patrol sergeant to move to from 16 to 17. We don't have hourly 17. It doesn't appear in there. Also, the request was 17 to 18. The jail commander from 17 to 18. Is that just a request to give them more money or to give them a larger range? I mean, is that
so yeah, when I think about these, those requests to say here, let's move them up to the next year, right? Right. They're not always necessarily followed within money a lot of that, right? So sometimes they are, right? Sometimes when we're going to move the request to say, hey, we want to move to this range. Again, we did with that, and so we moved the range, we moved all the wages as well, right? These aren't always necessarily that. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at what we're bringing from the other counties to say, here's the range.
Yeah.
We adjust that to the next range. We're now out of spec with all the rest of the several references.
being consistent? I get it. Yes. Yeah.
You have now.
One of the things I want to mention with this is kind of goes on and as we're going through this, there may be new positions that come in, there may be things that you this scale. I think it's a good practice to come in and go over it, adopt it every year, but this scale is probably going to have updates as we go. Yeah, we're going to be looking at, a new position comes in and we slot them in here. So this scale is going to have different additions as it goes.
And as we've talked about, but it is, continuous improvement. Right? We're trying to improve this process. You got to draw a line in the sand somewhere, get something that's basis, and then we can continue to review this to make changes as we go. But I think it's really good. And it sounds like you've worked with the other, the departments and everything that, to make sure that this is as complete as possible. I pray to be perfect every day, but it doesn't work, but I do. And so I think getting something adopted that takes care of most of our wish list that then we can continue to review, and you have something, a document to be able to go in and make modifications to it and bring to us as that.
That's very, very true. Thank you for the comment. And that's exactly right. And it is going to be constant change. Right? We're going to have new reference notes come out. We're going to have new data that's coming through yearly, if not more frequent than that. So there's going to be pieces that come in and next year we say, okay, maybe that truck matter not spotted with it. Right? Maybe you need to make moves based on that updated data. So there is going to be those moves. Compensation scales, salary scales move regularly. On this, we'll adopt one on a year ago, how we work pretty consistent as that information comes out.
All right, one other question. Sorry. So on as we brought up, the patrol sergeant, jail commander, and lieutenant patrol, do all three of those positions currently right now still fit within our range as presented here right now?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to commend Mr. Adams on his work on this. What he's worked really hard to do is bring some objectivity to it. We're not taking numbers out of a hat, but type of things you can look at and say, this is why, this is where this position fits. This is the scale. Of course, we know it's not perfect. It will never be perfect. But the level of objectivity, so as we go forward, as all hires must be approved by the board and the salary set by the board. This helps in that process. But as we come forward and new positions or adjustments to positions are presented, we'll be looking for that same level of objectivity. What are we comparing against? What's the need for this change? And so as a board, that will make your job of setting salaries as required by law a little more objective and easier to do.
Well, Austin, you know, I know you've done a lot of research on this. And I appreciate that. And unfortunately, HR is not an exact science. And especially when it comes to wages. And you're always gonna have differences of opinion, which is okay. But as long as you have the data to back it up and the rationale to say why you do the things you do. And I think that's important and that's what you've done here. So thank you. If there's no further discussion, a motion would be in order to.
Well, I move that we approve of the 2023-2024 salary scale as presented.
I second that motion.
Hear that motion in a second. Also, is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will now go to 15B, Sheriff.
Thank you, Tim Sumner, Greenland County Sheriff. This one here, I have no idea what it is. I don't know if anyone else does based on the agenda item alone. Decision, this discussion / consideration of approval regarding economic development. There's nothing else filled out on the form. There's no supporting documentation. It says must be accompanied. Just the prior one had the accompanying documentation. Everything else today we've seen had accompanying documentation. This one, I honestly believe it may be a county attorney. Maybe you might want to speak to, because I don't think it's properly agendized for this one. I'll say if you look at, ARS 3843 431.09, Arizona Agency Handbook for Open Meeting Laws under 7.7.1, 7.72, both those right there talk about actual agenda items, and they have to really give the idea of what is going to be voted on, what's going to be discussed in a board meeting. Honestly, I haven't really pointed this out before, other than I think one time offline before your meeting started, to stop one that was not properly agendized. But this one here, I mean, I don't know if you guys got more than I did, but in your packet that I received, the same packet you received, this is all that there is. And that says nothing. I mean, honestly, does this reflect, is this for current personnel, economic development? Is it the position that you have as supervisors to hire or not? I mean, there's really nothing to say what this is about. Is it a position change? Is it an addition? Is it a pay rate adjustment, which was actually just decided on, that you just approved and voted on? So probably not that one. Is it some sort of economic development purchase? I know you've been talking about economic development purchases and different things in the county. Is it an idea, philosophy? I mean, there's just so much just ambiguous, honestly, to the point that I really think that it's inappropriate to be on the agenda today unless there's some more information that the public and yourselves can have. I don't even know if it's about the economic development coordinator, who sued the county because he was harassed by the administrator, discriminated, retaliated against, which that finally settled in March of this year, a few months ago, total cost of $127,000. Basically, I would just be surprised if you decide to move on with it being so ambiguous, unless you somehow have an inherent knowledge of what that is beyond what others do. But then it'd be interesting how you got that privy to information with this limited information. So you guys have always done a great job, honestly. Pretty much your agendas are always really clear. They're very clear. Even today, looking at the agenda, it's very clear on what's being discussed. Even earlier, the lease versus purchase, and it got pointed out, it says lease. I mean, those types of things are clear. And it's good. That's how it needs to be for agenda items. So hearing echo again. So that's all I had really. And I would just say that it comes down to the county attorney's decision, I guess, or the office representative. For an omelet, it would be the attorney general to look at this. But I honestly think that it's so ambiguous, that one piece of paper with nothing on it other than just that one title, to be able to actually move on for an agenda item that's properly posted for the public. That's all I have. I really don't have anything else to talk about because I don't know what it's about. So thanks.
Thank you.
You have a ruling on this?
The ruling on whether it's proper. Do you want to table it or?
So, if you don't mind, I can give you a little bit of heads up on what the word is on, and I apologize on the wording on this. It should have been rule regarding contract. What this is about, time is semi of the essence with it, but we had our economic developer. Local coordinator has changed residence to Mexico. With that being said, that is problematic on our side as it causes a lot of HR issues when it comes to employment laws. Multiple things that go on with being an extra resident and not working on site in Green County or in Arizona. One of the options she mentioned talking about this is contract. So one of the things that we're looking at today is again what that looks like as far as a potential for a contract. Again, that's sent over some stuff last night, I believe.
Just think point of order. Just think point of order.
So that's what this this particular one is about. One of the things with this last minute, we're working through this is going through to where that looks like right now. That current person is using some of their leave time in order to kind of flow for the time being. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like after that, but that's again what this this is looking at.
Okay, and because of if we were going to discuss contract, I think the agenda ought to say contract. So with that, I'm going to table this as chairman, and we will bring it up at the next board meeting. And if you'd have contract on there, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
You need a motion, sir, for to table.
I think in this case, it's been simply withdrawn.
From. Yeah.
Yes. I think withdrawing is fine at this point. I think.
They're gonna withdraw.
Chairman has some executive privileges and
Wield that.
give me the. Okay, with that, we'll go to agenda item 16.
Thank you. There's really nothing new. The legislature is technically in session, but nobody's really there. There's occasionally people meeting on various things, but the legislature at this point is not actively, they're in adjournment at the moment. They have not adjourned for this sine die for the session. We've heard rumors that it might be the end of July, maybe sometime in August. There's one big issue remaining, and that's the Maricopa County transportation tax, the so-called Prop 400. That has not been addressed. And there's not really been any public comment as to whether anybody's talking about it to come to a solution. So as far as that goes, there's nothing to report on that front. On the calendar front, since Ms. Figueroa is not here, we have, of course, the meeting today. There's a junior rodeo. Is this the last installment? Chief?
Yes, this is the last one.
This is the last one on the 29th on Saturday. And then, of course, we didn't have any of the regular CSA affiliated meetings in July. Some of those will begin again in August and then in earnest again in September. We have a SEGO Administrative Council meeting on the 3rd of August. That I often attend those telephonically, but may show up on in person. We have Board of Supervisors meeting that is now moved from the 8th to the 10th. And we'll make that adjustment on the calendar. We'll begin at 8 o'clock. Duncan schools begin on the 9th of August. Right now, all the Morenci kids are envious. In the middle of fall, all the Duncan kids will be envious of the Morenci kids. We have a county managers meeting on the 11th. Blue School starts on the 14th, so everyone can be envious of them, both for location and the start date. And then we'll have an SEGO Executive Council meeting on the 18th at 10 o'clock. Board of Supervisors meeting is on the 21st. You'll recall we moved that to accommodate Craig Sullivan, so you can visit with us in the morning and then have a county afternoon, or maybe reverse.
He was reversed.
We'll be meeting in the afternoon. I visited him briefly about that last week, and we will get a solid time from him, and we'll set that meeting. Moving on to September.
Oh, yeah.
Is there something we need to add?
August 26th.
On 26, yeah, category, Greeley County category, 26, so just got that email as well.
You know, that's
South Annex.
Yes, South End.
Yeah.
okay. Moving into September, the offices, of course, will be closed for Labor Day. That has caused us to bump our board meeting back to the 6th of September, the first one. We appreciate that as a staff, to give us that day before the meeting. It allows us to get all the things lined up and ready for the meeting, so we appreciate that. The county fair is, of course, the 14th through the 17th. County managers meeting is on that 15th on that day. Board of Supervisors meeting, our second one for the month will be on the 19th at 8 o'clock. And then we'll resume our normal pattern meetings associated with CSA and ECO, with the small counties and ECO meeting being held in the afternoon and evening of the 20th. And then the CSA Board of Directors meeting being held on the 21st. The WIFA, we may have not counted all the WIFA meetings, and Chairman, if you have
In August, it's on in August, it is on the 16th.
16th, okay. We will add that.
And it will be in Phoenix.
Maybe it'll prove the place off the degrees. And with that, that's what we have in account. Certainly going to add more or modify it.
Does anybody have anything?
No.
Okay, thank you very, very much. We'll now go to in item 17, and the sheriff has asked to, well, maybe we ought to pull that from the consent agenda and then talk about it after we hear. So let's do it that way. Let's approve the consent agenda with the exception of A, and then we'll allow the sheriff and
Except for 17A.
separate 17A, yeah. So a motion will be in order.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as posted with the removal of agenda item 17A.
Second that motion. Have motion and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. We now go to 17A. Sheriff?
Sumner Greeley County Sheriff, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I thought you were pulling it so I could talk offline with Bianca or someone, but that's fine. On the minutes from the July 6th, 2023 meeting, on your second page, your agenda item number 4. Look at agenda item number 4 there. It shows where I spoke. Mr. Sumner requested to speak and suggested that item be tabled. Hadn't had enough time to review the scale and notice the job description isn't listed from the sheriff's office. Mr. Adams ends up speaking about the construction of the scale, and then the board expressed their appreciation to Mr. Adams, recommended tabling the item so all elected officials can have time to review the scale and make necessary suggestions. The only thing I was going to point out right here was I do recall that the scale was not available to you or to anyone, and that we quickly got it right before the meeting started. And so, yes, I did make a comment, and it has my record, and I don't know what the importance of putting that down for me, but it said that I hadn't had enough time to review the scale. I do recall actually comments from up there from the board making the same comments. So yes, we haven't had enough time. We just barely received it ourselves and had not had enough time. So I just think it's important in the minutes to either say the board agreed they just barely received the document, didn't have enough time as well, or remove the comment for myself. It just doesn't make sense. Why is it just the sheriff that looks like he's the one stating he hasn't had enough time to look at this when it really was mutual? And it was the fact that no one else in the county elected official or department headed had a chance to even see the scale yet at that point. So that's all I wanted to point out. I just I'd like to see that. It seems, I'm not sure why the difference of pointing out that I'm the one complaining, I guess, that I hadn't had enough time, and yet you guys were in the same boat as I was. So not a huge thing, but I just like the accuracy to be equal on how it's worded. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's just removed. Sheriff hasn't had, enough time and, I think that will suffice. Gentlemen, do you agree?
Yeah.
Yep. And so with that, would that change, your motion would be in order?
Well, based on the change recommended, I move that we approve of the minutes to the previous meeting on 7/26/2023, not 2026. I'll make that correction too.
Second that motion.
You have motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. We'll now go to agenda item 18. Supervisor report. Mr. Campbell.
Good, I'm gonna this time, thank you.
All I have is, we met again, Seagull, the board of Seagull in regards to the position of executive director of, Seagull. We're, gonna re-advertise with a different pay scale and, that's forthcoming.
That's all I had. Thank you. Well, I did have the opportunity to go to the annual, make responsible. First, I sit on the public grants, committee. There was 23 resolutions that were up for debate. 21 of those passed. The two that were withdrawn were highly debated. They had to do with the land acquisition. Also, we voted for the second vice president of the NACO, and there was two candidates running, one from Virginia and one from I believe Minnesota, and the one withdrew, and so Mr. J.D. Clark from Virginia was elected the second vice president. Other than that, that's my report, and there being no further business, this meeting is now adjourned.